recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer himself, the greatest professional wrestler of all time, your friend and mine, Double J, JArrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, slap nuts, slap ass, slappy. Hello, Connie. We're getting out of the gate a little late this week, so I apologize right off the top.
You want to give everybody a peek behind the curtain without all the graphic details?
Conrad, why don't you just kind of lay it out? You're much better, and I'll just chime in. But
so behind the scenes, Jeff and our crack producer Marcus and I, we all have sort of a standing appointment that we record our shows that are supposed to drop on Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern at 10:30 a.m. Central on Monday. So that way we can be as up to date and current as we possibly can be, with the exception of perhaps watching Monday Night Raw. And we've done that for a while, well over a year. And that's sort of been our standing appointment. And there's been some good-natured ribbing about Jeff, who prides himself on his punctuality, but has never actually shown up on time. And so whenever we
I'm in pain right now. Go ahead.
So whenever we have to rearrange scheduling, I always say, when Jeff says 10:30 sounds good, and I immediately reply to the group text, 10:44, Jeff's running a little late. Now, I'm not doing that the day of. I'm doing that 4 days in advance, because that's just par for course with Jeff. He is the most scheduled and structured person I know. Before he was working with AEW, he had 15-minute intervals in his calendar. I only got 11 minutes, Connie. Got to talk fast, that sort of thing. So when I got the heads up that he wasn't going to be able to tape yesterday, or we needed to be sort of fluid with our times, I thought, something must be off. And it turns out it was. Like Kenny Omega couldn't take down the Last Outlaw. MJF knows better than even to try. And get out of here with Aubrey Edwards thinking she could hold a good man down. And Max Caster, please. But that damn dentist, and more importantly, the cash register at the dentist on the way out. Woo. He lost 2 straight falls yesterday, but here he is through gritted teeth. Maybe some fake ones now too. I don't know, but several $1,000s later, the Last Outlaw is here, and you've been the king of the mountain, and you've done all these crazy gimmick matches. But damn, Isaac Yankem DDS, he got you, didn't he?
Folks,
my God.
I just gotta, I'll tell on myself, but tell on Conrad. As right before we hit play today, I kind of gave them the download, because it's all been by text. Yes, I had woke up yesterday morning. It kind of bothered me through the weekend, but a very, very back molar had to go. Never had a cavity in my life. Always had good luck there. It was tooth had to go. Got an implant put in. We talked root canal and all kinds of stuff. And I just said, hey, he goes, what's your schedule this week? Oh, I said, I fly to Portland, Oregon tomorrow. He said, okay, when you get back from that. I said, I'm not sure about this weekend. Very possible. Could go to Oakland. Not real sure. And then he said, well, what about next week? I said, that'd be Ontario and LA. And we know each other well. And I said, he goes, so you don't have anything really in the foreseeable future? I said, nope. And I said, all right, let's go for it. Just get it out. And he said, you up for it now? I said, do the whole ball of wax. So I had to text Conrad and Marcus and all that. But when we sit down today and I kind of give them the update, Conrad's very first comment were, let me just ask you, Jeff, what hurt worse? The dentist procedure or the credit card exchange? He knows me well. Folks, I'm very grateful. And all kidding aside, you don't have your health, you don't have anything. I mean,
listen, let me brag on you for a minute. I don't think a lot of people have put this together, because you don't talk about it a ton. But my man started wrestling in the mid 80s. But visually, I want you to show everybody on YouTube, myworldonyoutube.com. Show us a visual representation of the number of surgeries you've had, Jeff, with your hands. That's a big 0. a goose egg. And I ask you to think long and hard about some of your other favorite wrestlers you've grown up watching, those that have been active since the mid 80s to now. How many can say they've had 0 surgeries? And then when they do have a surgery, it's for a damn molar. Isn't that crazy? WCW couldn't catch you. World Class couldn't get you. Vince McMahon's WWF couldn't stop you. Get out of here, AEW. No, if you're going to hold a good man down, it's going to be old Isaac Yankum DDS. Who'd have thought?
Don't jinx me, Conrad. Don't jinx me, but no.
That is a cool stat, realistically. To have wrestled as long as you have, 0 surgeries. I mean, you're probably the only wrestler in the history of the earth to do that.
I don't know about that, but
who else do you know? Seriously, who didn't have a surgery?
I feel like you're jinxing me, but I don't know. I mean,
I'm not trying to jinx you. I'm just saying, I think it's kudos for you knowing what your body can and can't do, trying to avoid crazy or dangerous spots or circumstances and mitigate risk as best as you can. And you've also done a lot of preventative stuff. I mean, we don't talk about this on air, but you've got a whole routine before you ever step through the ropes for warming up. And you've done that for a long, long time. And you've done a lot of preventative maintenance and a lot of holistic stuff. And I'm giving you your flowers. You're just not wanting to take them here.
Okay. But you know what? That when the doc sat down with me yesterday, they kind of go through all these things and all this. And how do you respond to this? And he said, what about pain meds? And he knows I'm in recovery. And I said, hey, I'm not going down that route. But what he goes, well, he said, okay, you don't have to do that, but I'd like for you to kind of take a combo Tylenol and ibuprofen. And he goes, how do you do on that? I looked at him and I said, I think I've probably taken less than 10, 15 Advil my entire life.
What?
Any of that. And you know what? My doc, Dr. Tim Adair, we've talked about this, having him like doing my world bonus.
Yes.
Just because it may not interest some folks, but health folks, it really may enlighten them. But you know, just getting with him, and he's a applied kinesiologist. You call him an AK doctor, but you know, his trade you would call a chiropractor. Most chiropractors kind of adjust bones. Then there's some that kind of work on the muscle tissue, and then the connective tissue, ligaments, and tendons and all that kind of stuff. And then they'll get into nerves. And then there's other guys that just get into all 3 sides of the triangle, the chemical part of it, which is your nutrition and then what you eat and just preventive maintenance and all that kind of stuff. I got with him in 92, Conrad, in a car wreck going to Memphis, and it rattled my back good. And went to him, and he got me back up and running. And I've been with him ever since. Some folks at TNA, he came to TNA for a pretty long extended period of time and worked with everybody there. So some of the TNA guys will know that. But to me, listening to his guidance has paid incredible dividends. The ibuprofen, the pain pills and all that, yes, it does get you out of pain. And I think there's a time and place for all that. But it also, if you take it kind of on the regular, it really masks what needs to be addressed. And that, I think that is the big thing, is people don't realize that kind of stay on the ibuprofen and the Advil and all this. Hey man, it works, and it works for a reason. It kind of masks the joints and where you're having issues. The flip side of that is you're just kind of making things worse, and it's very hard on your kidneys and liver and all this. But man, we went really on a.
Wait, help me understand. You're saying, I mean, I just want to make sure, because I felt like I misheard there. Are you telling me in 40 years of wrestling, you've had less than 15 Advil, ibuprofen type pills?
Yes.
Well, how is that possible, Jeff?
Like,
what are you doing right now? You just had, I mean, I'm not saying this to be gruesome, and I hate to even be gross. Jeff had a drill in his mouth 2 hours ago.
Okay.
And you're not taking anything?
Okay. Here's a little different. No, here's the difference. In my recovery,
right,
I figured out this strange, miraculous kind of deal. Jeff doesn't know everything.
Okay.
So prior to getting sober, I mean, Conrad, I never had hangovers, but no, I wouldn't take none of that. And again, I'm going back to the if your body aches, it's aching for a reason. Go fix it, go treat it, go stretch it, get plenty of you would be amazed at what the water can do for your system on a consistent basis, because it keeps all the toxins flushed out. I am on ibuprofen right now. That's the only thing I've had. So yeah, that just to clear. Yes, Conrad, I haven't. And you know,
I can't imagine all those years.
I was never a pain pill guy. Never. I mean, back in the day, and we've kind of covered this in Good Natured Fun, you know, Road Dog, and I'm not calling him out because he's sober now too, is, you know, it's like, y'all go have that. I'll be over here with my Rocky Mountain spring water and head down that road. That was just, I never. So I do think coming out of hard matches and that kind of stuff, the alcohol in your system helps you kind of come down.
Yes.
But when I put my feet on the ground the next morning, I was right back into my nutrition. I've taken it's probably around 20 vitamins a day since 92.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's a consistent deal. That's kind of driven my kids crazy with it. Drive Karen crazy with it from time to time. But that was kind of my mindset, that you either got to go one way or the other. And Dr. Tim taught me this. If you don't want to go pharmaceuticals, then pal, you got to go the other way and
Right.
make sure you're get your nutrition in on you. And that's just kind of the mindset I've had. Until Jacob got me. No, go ahead.
I'm fascinated by this conversation because, I mean, I knew you weren't a pain pill guy, but in my mind, like almost everyone listening to this, occasionally, I'm not saying every day, but a few times a year, gets a headache, just doesn't feel good, whatever.
Yeah.
And throw down a few Advil just to get some comfort or just to fall asleep if they've got some sort of nagging, whatever. And to know that you're, you know, respectfully, basically a professional stuntman, a live action stuntman for 40 years, and you've not made that a regular part of your repertoire is amazing to me, especially when you say, well, I did it for the health benefits. But I also know that before I knew you, my friend Jeff was a bit of a partier. And it's like, how do you reconcile that? And we've just identified that, you know, the prescription thing was never really your deal. Even the over the counter thing was never your deal. But in all your time in wrestling, you had to like have fun recreationally, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you reconcile that the recreational stuff, that's not, I think most people would go the other way. They're more likely to do an ibuprofen or an Advil or a Tylenol or whatever than they are recreational stuff. But when you're living that rock star road warrior life, the recreational stuff is just plentiful, right? I mean, it's there, it's offered, it's available.
Conrad, I'm going to give you a real peek behind the curtain on the last 6 years, if you will, just kind of because believe me, all of this has been addressed. Okay. Like, help me make sense of this.
Yes.
And I mean, again, you can only imagine the folks that have asked me this. And here's kind of, man, I'm going to say this, not as diplomatic, but I'm going to try to word this the best I can.
Okay.
So, because there's anonymity involved in this, but let's just, the 12 steps of recovery. Step 2. Okay. Step 2 is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves, you can call them God, you can call them whatever you want, but the step reads, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves, greater than Jeff in my case, can restore us to sanity. If you take that and really digest it, and I said this early, okay, restore to sanity. So you're telling me, counselor, you're telling me, sponsor, you're telling me, doctor, you're telling me, whoever it may be in my early discussions, that I'm insane? And Conrad, that is the disease of addiction in its very corest. The disease of addiction affects the brain where decisions are made. If you want to put us under an MRI and the lights up, and if you have somebody who has a gambling addiction, they do not think anywhere close to logical in that realm. And there's all kinds of, there's all kinds of different forms of addiction. Mine was obviously alcohol. So I didn't think rationally. And when you're on that, so me not taking any of that kind of stuff, in a lot of ways, yeah, that's insane thinking. He's going to go drink a lot of alcohol, but oh, dear God, don't put an Aleve in his system. I mean, you know what I mean?
That's where I was getting. It's like, I don't understand how we can reconcile that thinking, but you just nailed it. Like, hey, that is the business of active addiction. Like, you don't know what you're saying isn't very logical or rational.
Which to roll that domino down when you're in your sphere of wife or kids or friends, when you make that kind of insane decision over here, right?
Yeah.
And people look at you like, dude, you're nuts.
Yes.
So then you got to go over on this side of things. And even if you're saying something that is absolutely makes sense, they have to take it with a grain of salt and go, okay.
About that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a family disease. And I say that because it extends in any family, friends, biological, blood, whatever it may be. So yeah, man, we really went down a rabbit hole, didn't we, pal? But I was going to say this, and here's kind of because I'm like, I might want to share this. How quickly, now the tooth hurt Sunday.
Right.
I woke up Sunday morning. I'm like, this ain't right. So as I'm kind of doing the chores around the house, and I got to update on Trap That Thing here in a minute, but man, how quickly forget a toothache. Like how, it hurt, folks. Scale of 1 to 10. Doctor asked me, is it, an 8 or a 9? And he's nodding his head like, yeah, it's probably an 8, 9, or 10. And I'm like, no, 4 or 5. He said, oh, come on. He said, do you have a high pain tolerance? Anyway, I say all that, okay, my pain was getting up there. But I did think, and I came in and I told Karen that, how quickly we forget when we don't have our health. And a really good buddy of mine from high school, played basketball with him. He's my financial advisor. I'll leave his name out of it, but there's folks that know he was recently diagnosed with ALS.
Oh, man.
And yeah, Conrad, and just the strength that he's currently showing. And, it is something that I'm giving the recovery side of this, that, the gratitude I have that, Jeff, shake it off, get out of your self-pity party. You got a damn toothache, move on with it. I think that helps me when I'm saying, Jeff, that's all you're taking. Hey, yeah, I could bear a lot worse pain that others are going through right now. So prayers up. I'll on the podcast, I'll, from time to time, but life is tough, pal. But that news that I got last Wednesday night and then have carried through, it has been weighing heavily on me. But there will be a better day. There's no doubt. So thought I'd share.
There will. Hey, real quick, want to encourage everybody, stop sending money to big insurance companies that profit off of not paying your bills. Did you know that 48 million claims of Obamacare last year were denied? That's 1/5 of the claims that are not. That's 1/5 of the claims that are going to get rejected. You want to take that chance? Here's the deal. Health insurance sucks. It's confusing, it's expensive, and it's frustrating. But there is a better way. Welcome to the alternative. Crowd Health was created to get rid of the headaches of health insurance. For $175 for an individual or $575 for a family of 4 or more, you'll get access to a community of people who are willing to help out in the event of an emergency. You'll also get telemedicine visits, discounted prescriptions, and more. All of this without doctors' networks getting in the way. Let Crowd Health help with your healthcare needs. You can get started today for just $99 per month for the first 3 months when you use the code WRESTLE to get the healthcare you deserve. Crowd Health is not insurance. Learn more at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com and use the code WRESTLE to get started today for just $99 a month for the first 3 months. Listen, we're going to be talking about Turning Point 2008 today, but before we do, we should talk about a lot of the current moving and shaking in the wrestling business. Jeff, it's been a little while since we talked about it, but man, I'm getting tagged in my timeline left and right with people posting graphics of yours truly in the Wrestle Quest video game. What's going on with Wrestle Quest? What's the latest, man? All I see is positive stuff on social.
Now, Conrad, give yourself some flowers, pal. It's our game.
There we go.
You're in it. It is rocking and rolling. We have some, again, I'm the wrestling component, so I'm not the gaming component, but the guys at AEW are talking about it. The gaming folks, and it's a whole new world. I cracked good old Greg Miller. I've got some follow-up for him. But the game has took off. It took off from day one. It's rolling along, and we've got a major announcement that we're actually teasing it in their world, but it's coming up. I just wanted to give all those folks a great shout out. I appreciate you bringing that up. But Moonsault Digital, Mega Cat Studios, Skybound Games, Skybound Entertainment. It is they're all fantastic partners. The marketing plan they put together, super consistent. They keep rolling along. I'm on a Slack channel, on their Slack channel, and you just kind of can see the continuous updates and this and that. And again, it's a new world for me. So I am super excited, super grateful to be a part of it. But Wrestle Quest, folks, you can, wherever you download games, you can get it. Go get it. Yours truly. The Podfather's in it. It's a who's who. It is truly a love letter to professional wrestling, Japanese role-playing game. Go get it. Have a blast. You'll have a ton of fun.
I can't recommend it enough. I've got a lot of my friends and family who wanted to check it out because they saw I was in the game, and now they're addicted to it. They absolutely love it. I think you'll love it too. Check it out. Wrestle Quest. Any way you enjoy games, anywhere, they got it. Speaking of they got it, you need the tickets. You're going to see The Last Outlaw sooner rather than later at an AEW show. It's AEWTIX.com. Speaking of tickets are going on sale. That was Tony's Khan's big announcement. The biggest wrestling event of all time has a second act. It's the third All In, and it's coming on the 25th of August, 2024 at Wembley Stadium. The pre-sale is going to start on Monday, November 27th. You can go ahead and get in line and get registered so you don't miss any of those opportunities over at AEWTIX.com. But before we get there, in 11 days, we got the big Full Gear pay-per-view in LA at the Kia Forum. We've also got Collision and Rampage this weekend. We got Oakland, California on deck. But later today, as we're recording this, you're flying to Portland tomorrow night on AEW Dynamite. We've got MJF defending his world title against Daniel Garcia. We got Swerve Strickland taking on Penta. We got Samoa Joe and Keith Lee battling for the Ring of Honor TV title. And Mark Briscoe is going to be returning, taking on Jay Briscoe. I got my fingers crossed. We're going to see The Last Outlaw. Jeff, there's a lot of moving parts in AEW right now, man. You guys are pay-per-views one after another. The biggest show ever, the follow-up act. And there's lots of whispers. Who is the devil? It's an interesting time in AEW these days, no?
Oh, to say the least. I don't look the Wembley. We'll call it the Wembley team.
Yep.
It's big internally. I'm super excited to just kind of put that, chart that course. Last year the runway. We'll call it the runway. Tickets went on sale late. I think not till May did we sell the first ticket, but anyway, so I'm excited that we're getting them on early before before the holiday season, or as we go into the holiday season. You can pre-register right now. They're rolling off, and just kind of just the entire process, being a part, like I've said multiple times, not just on this podcast, but others, getting to be a part of kind of this whole process. And God almighty, Conrad, what a challenge. If you really want to, in our business, and I go back to the funny stories of my dad's, Nick Goulas, the promoter before him, every Saturday night in Nashville, he would say, and he's the promoter, it's the greatest card I've ever signed. It's the greatest card, but he'd say it every week. And it's kind of old promoter speak. But how do you top Wembley 2023? It's just the first time, the buzz. AEW had never been in the market. So it is a monumental challenge in front of all of us. But I'm excited to kind of chart the course, and it all gets kicked off end of this month. Tickets go on sale to the general public early December, I believe, but end of this month, kicking things off for the pre-sale. I'm excited, and you've mentioned everything else. So yes, it is an exciting time to say the least. Never slows down. We've got some unique Friday. We got a live Friday this Friday in Oakland. And then the following week, we got another live in Collision at the Forum the night before the pay-per-view. So lots of live content coming up. So yeah, busy time, very busy time.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Be sure to see The Last Outlaw live, AEWTIX.com. Let's talk about why we're here today, Jeff. We're going to be talking.
Hold on. Uh-oh. I don't even want to read you the text, but you want to update on, is it Skunk Gate or?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Skunk Gate. We should talk about that. Now we're talking about Joe Burrow, right? Joe Burrow. Because I heard that he was carried by the rest of his team.
Jamar Chase, the Bengals, twice a day a clock's right. And that's kind of how the Bengals are. But Jamar Chase, the running game, the defensive line, the defensive coordinators, they've really, really surrounded their QB in a positive way. So in spite of the low QB rating, in spite of his unproductivity, the Bengals played, I'd say, average, maybe a little above average, but I'm happy for the bottom barrel suckers. Parity's great for the league. It's always going to be great for the league. And, they've really surrounded that QB situation. And in spite of kind of his lackluster play overall, I'm talking about the overall season. It's right. If you look at QB play in Cincinnati this entire year, not a snapshot, not a quarter, not a half, just over the year, it's way below average, especially when you talk return on investment. So that we're not talking about that. We're God ready.
Okay, so when you said the skunk, you're not talking about how damn Tennessee's are only ranked 14, right? I mean, you're not talking about that. You're not talking about how they're going to tote an ass whooping this Saturday against Missouri. You're not talking about that.
Dave Green, fighting words. A lot of chatter, pal. Me and Dave Green.
A lot of chatter that Tennessee's going to lose to Missouri. That's the chatter I heard.
Oh, wait. Who did Missouri just play this past weekend? Georgia?
And damn near beat them.
What's the final? What's the final?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying they almost won.
Okay. Let's not stretch. We don't.
Well, I mean, listen, let's talk about when y'all played Georgia. Do you remember that?
Okay. So I'm telling you what, man, we've got Jesus. SEC is just tough. It is tough. You know what? I saw a question on Twitter about.
Will y'all win another game, you think? We know you're going to lose to Missouri this weekend. That's a given.
No.
We know in 2 weeks you're going to lose to Georgia. That's a given. And I've heard Vandy is looking for the upset. I heard y'all are on upset alert against Vandy. And I'm going to tell you now, if you lose to Vandy, you better show up the next week wearing Alabama Crimson Tide colors.
You probably watched enough of Georgia this year. Do you think they're beatable?
Hell yes.
No doubt in my mind.
No doubt in my mind. And by the way, so is pissant Ohio State. Rutgers almost
Ohio State, Michigan. That whole conference is so weak.
I think Penn State could beat Michigan this weekend.
I completely agree with that. Old brother James Franklin, former Vanderbilt coach, but I completely agree with that.
I'm just saying it's Alabama's game to lose at this point.
So on a scale or chances, what'd you just say?
I just said it's Alabama's game to lose at this point. I mean, there's no chance Alabama's winning an national championship this year, but I got to get on here and talk smack. It's just in my nature.
Look, so here's if all right, hypothetically speaking.
Okay. You know, I love these.
Hypothetically speaking, if Tennessee beats Missouri,
they won't.
I said hypothetically.
Okay, got it.
Damn. Sitting over here on one ibuprofen, right out of surgery,
getting your balls busted. I'm the worst friend anybody can ask for.
If Tennessee beats pronouns, pal, if Tennessee beats Missouri by 2 touchdowns, hypothetically,
okay,
we're hitting on all cylinders. What are the chances we beat Georgia? Give it a 0 to 100. What are the chances? Seriously, try to answer this one seriously, because I know it's not 0%.
15-20%.
Okay. Still that low. Okay.
I just don't think Tennessee's a good team.
Worse than last year?
Last year, Tennessee was a good team.
Okay. So you think we've taken a step back?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Major.
Wow. Okay.
And no Hendon Hooker.
Okay.
Hooker was your man. I mean, y'all got skunked in the second half against Alabama. I mean, I don't know how you go 27-0 in a whole half of football.
Bad football.
And then you struggle with Kentucky, an unranked Kentucky, barely beat them.
Hey,
now I know you were in a track meet, and I mean that UConn game was a basketball score.
Oh, ridiculous! I hate those late season. I get it; you need a break. I just don't think that does any upside to play that big. Hey, me and the Queen and Coaster last Thursday night football. Cody's very first Pittsburgh Steeler game there live,
and he claims to be a Steelers fan. So
of course he is. He's born there.
Well, I've seen him waffle a few times.
A few times. Jags. He's been a Burrow man for a while at one time. He's been a Titans.
Have I told you about the transition in my household?
Oh no.
Megan's a huge Eagles fan now. She watched the Kelsey documentary on Hulu. She loves the center there.
Big brother.
And I was like, you know what? I'll co-sign that one because they got
Jalen
Hurts, they got Devonta Smith, they got Julio Jones. Okay. So we managed to watch this weekend. My dad's a long-suffering Cowboys fan.
Damn, me too.
Megan was just hammering him. It was great.
Oh my God. Eagles are on a roll, man. They got a good anyway, good team. Real quick, because I know we got to get into our topic. Conrad. So I think the last I told you guys that we still had a monster skunk to go.
Yes, like the Andre the Giant level skunk.
It is a super heavyweight. He's the butterbean. He's giant.
Okay.
So Last Outlaw said, I'll figure this out. I went down to Tractor Supply and I upscaled. I bought a bigger trap. So now we have a trap on the side of the house at the air conditioner. We have a trap out by our playhouse that the girls used to have, but we kind of remodeled it for codes years ago. But now all the kids have outgrown it. But anyway, still got the playhouse, and then we got one down the dock. So I strategically have 3 places to catch this Andre the Giant skunk. We also have seen on the cameras, we got a good old Rocky the Raccoon.
Oh.
And I think if I haven't shared with you, Conrad, if the skunk's big, the raccoon's bigger. And okay. I know that biologically he's supposed to be bigger. This is a gigantic. I mean, these kids have been eating great down there. I guess it's all the acorns or whatever it is. I mean, he's huge.
Did you get him some of your old school growth hormone from the 90s?
Conrad, I know we got to get to the topic. I'm sorry.
No, this is fun. I love hearing about your skunk.
You will not believe this. So Karen wakes me up, or not wakes me up. Early Sunday morning. She said, "You won't believe this." So we put in there bread and honey and all kind. We've tried a bunch of different things. I still keep the bread and the peanut butter and the honey in there, and a little bit of different food on there. But the guy the professional came out, it's easy for them. They just have stacks of honey buns in their boxes. Because it's easily plastic wrapping. So he said, hey, break up a honey bun and throw it in there in the back. They'll come to that. So Karen said, you know what? I'm going to kind of lead a trail. So she kind of put 2 or 3 pieces of honey bun out in front of the one by the dock and by the one by the playhouse to kind of get them eating and kind of get them hooked on that sugar crack honey bun, and then get them to go up because they could smell it. Conrad, the raccoon, found it, ate every bit of it. There's rocks on each side of all 3, the backside. So, because we don't want the raccoon, he's smart enough to put his little paw through there and pull the honey bun out so you can't get to it. He moves the rock and still thieves our bait that's in there down by the dock. Up by the playhouse. I'm not kidding you. He eats it all up around that. And then because it's a smaller trap, he can't get his little paw through that. So what does he do? He grabs the entire trap and pulls it about 15, 20 feet down in the back of the yard, and then gives up and moves on. So we have raccoons just getting their cardio and workout.
Gosh.
It's unbelievable. We can't catch this damn thing, but perseverance, pal. There are 3 P's in my life that have paid off well: persistence, passion, and perseverance. I've got that. I want to trap that thing. I'm getting the skunk and the raccoon.
I love it. And you're doing it with new teeth. Boxofgimmicks.com is where you can get that new Skunk Hunt t-shirt styled like an old OG Nintendo game.
I love
Go
it.
check it out. Boxofgimmicks.com. That's up now. By the way, we've talked a lot about addictions and habits and things like that today. Well, here's a little pro tip. Cold turkey might be great on sandwiches, but there is a better way to break your bad habits. And we're not talking about some crazy mind voodoo from your crazy neighbor or our pal Dave Meltzer. We're talking about our sponsor, Fume. You see, they look at the problem in a different way. You know, not everything in a bad habit is wrong. So how about instead of a drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-nominated device that does just that. You see, instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses all natural, delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy, and it makes replacing your bad habit easy. Your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for your fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing and anxiety while breaking your habit. And I got to tell you, my wife Megan was blown away with the flavor. She was blown away at how fresh the crisp mint was. That's one of her favorite flavors. There's lots of flavors for you to try too. How about raspberry lemon or orange vanilla or sparkling grapefruit, or how about white cranberry? They got something for everybody. I think you're going to dig it. You're also going to love the way the thing looks. See, the Fume is actually made out of real wood. It's a beautiful shape, and you just feel cool using it. But Megan tells me she likes the way it's well weighted. It's perfectly balanced. It's just fun to fidget with, which is important when you're trying to quit one of those bad habits. Stopping is something we all put off because it's hard. But you see, switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun. How about this? Fume has served over 100,000 customers, and now they have thousands of success stories, and there's no reason that can't be you. So join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com and use our code JARRETT to save 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com and the code is JARRETT. That's JARRETT. You'll save an additional 10% off your order today. So Jeff, we're finally here. We're going to talk about it. Turning Point 2008. It's hard to believe it's been 15 years. We have discussed this time period before. We had an episode called Creating the Main Event Mafia. So be sure to check those archives out over at myworldpod.com. But today we're going to be discussing all of the business for TNA, not just the Main Event Mafia, but all the moving and shaking. And coming out of Bound for Glory 2008, Our man Wade Keller was not super pumped about the direction of TNA and even brings up some storyline aspects utilized for your match with Kurt. Wade would write, JArrett made the controversy of his utilizing the real-life tragedy of his wife dying seem restrained and tasteful by sinking even lower by incorporating his daughters into the show. They actually overtly played off the fact that at some point Jeff had to tell his daughters, quote, "Mommy's not coming home," after she died of breast cancer, by having Angle say to Jeff's daughters through the camera, "Daddy's not coming home." When Jarrett won, Mike Tenay did a shout out to the daughters as if it had been inspirational for them to watch their dad beat up a man who said daddy's not coming home into the camera and bashing him over the head with a guitar, but not before watching their dad take a blunt chair shot to the head. Tenay made it sound like Jarrett's daughters were watching and that it would be appropriate if so. You addressed this in the Daily Star and had this to say. "No, I did not know he was going to say that," you told Patrick Lennon. "I spoke to him about it afterwards and told him he needed to focus. I told him, you're hurting yourself. Kurt is Kurt. What you see is what you get. The person we hired 2 years ago is not the person we have today, but he's going through a lot of change outside the ring." All right, I'm confused here. The way it's positioned in the torch, it's like, hey, this was all your idea and something you were doing. Then you're saying, no, it's not. And I can't tell if your comments about Kurt not being the person that you hired 2 years ago, is that in character? Is that real life? Combination of both? What do you make of all this?
So I had to reread it and research to try to click my brain back into gear. So on the overarching kind of comments that Keller made about this, we talked, and I say we, pronouns, pal, the creative team. And I still am a big believer that, look, it's up to the individual first and foremost. It was up to me. It wasn't up to the creative team. You know, when you use
real life.
Yeah. When I say that, yes, real life, because there's always a fine line, but the line kind of has to be drawn by the person that it's their real life about.
That's right.
I was always, and I went back and forth with this a lot and had a lot of discussions. Do we ignore it completely? Is that not, and there's that old famous saying, life imitates art and art imitates life. Again, I don't think there is a right or a wrong decision. I think it's kind of trying to make the very best decision that you can possibly make at the time. And we chose, okay, let's touch on it. And look, if I could go back and listen to it, Tenay and Don West were very, very sensitive to all of it. I mean, Mike was here at the house a lot in late 2005, all of 2006 into 2007, and then on too, but he was around the situation a lot. So Mike knew firsthand kind of not just me, but the girls and just the entire situation. So he just said, Jeff, I'll handle it anyway, but without question, I'm going to be respectful of the situation. I said, okay. So we said, let's not ignore it, but just don't go overboard with it. Well, I have to respect Kurt's feelings and knowing that, okay, he's going to take the same mindset that he knew the situation. Of course, he was sympathetic with the situation.
Yeah.
But he's also going to play the role of an antagonist.
Yes.
And dive into that. So I was totally fine with his comments because I also knew his, Kurt and me had conversations, when he came on board, but through Jill's illness and all that, I knew where Kurt's head was at. But when you have a Patrick Lennon, and I'm trying to think of, look, you can't just say, or my belief is, and I think this gets into a much broader discussion. It kind of drives me crazy this day and age when you get into any kind of journalist today, and you just kind of like, oh no, it's all BS. It's all kidding. It's all this, all that. That what is that real upside other than helping that publication get clicks? Period. Right. And I understand that as well. But with that being said, I'm in character with Kurt, period. You know, as it relates to Patrick Lennon, I'm not going to just say, hey, oh, come on, guy. You know, no, that wasn't. And yes, 2007 and 2023, it's a different landscape. It's a different world. But I go back to my overarching theme that the talent, the next breakout talent of today's world will understand social media and use it to its advantage as opposed to the social media using them to their advantage.
Well said. Let me ask you this about your daughters.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked before about how, you know, when you first started to have success on mainstream big time television for the WWF, like when you won the title or whatever, was your dad watching? Did your wife go? Did you call home after? Were you getting these big congratulatory messages? And you were sort of dismissive of that and said, no, it was just another day at the office. Kids are a different thing. Were the girls interested and invested in your wrestling career? Were they paying attention? Did they start to pay more attention when mom was gone? And then finally, lastly, did they watch this and how did they feel about it? Did you discuss it with them?
I would assume, and this was the Kurt match is Bound for Glory, correct? That's the one. No, yeah, that's what they're talking about. That's what Wade is talking about. Yeah, I think. Yes, I would say so. Believe it or not, Jill's mother was a big wrestler, is a big wrestler. She's still living, is a big wrestling fan. So I don't know for exact, but I feel pretty certain, yes, that they were watching it.
So you assume when you're out wrestling, they're with Jill's mom and she's getting the pay-per-view and they're all watching.
My guess, my best recollection.
And I guess since you're kind of fuzzy on whether or not they watched, that means they certainly weren't offended and didn't have any problems. You didn't have to put out any fires.
Oh, no. I mean, look, and I'm not gonna look. I can hear it even in my head and others' head. Jeff, they're kids. They don't know any better. I did the best I possibly could in saying, "Hey, girls," and you know, Jocelyn at this time maybe 12, 11, 12, 8, 9, 4, 5. You know, so you just do the best that you can and talk through it. I've always said this about not just wrestlers, anything, role models, which can be or should be a mom, a dad, a coach, an uncle, an aunt, a grandfather, with kids are people that you know, the kids have to have a real relationship, not just through a video screen. So they knew that's dad's job. They knew that's his work. That's what he does. But the real dad comes home, and they're aware of that. They were aware of that, and they, you know, that was the reality. Having a conversation with him about it.
Let's talk about something else you're going to be doing here. You're going to be switching TNA to high definition.
Oh gosh.
I've had conversations with people who were with WWE when they made that switch, and I forget the number, but it was a staggering dollar amount that was required for this. Just all new sets and cameras, and the way everything is produced had to change. And, you know, we've heard a bunch of specific examples over the years of guys who would use self-tanner, and now all of a sudden with HD, boy, that started to look pretty rough at times. Tell me about the transition from standard television to high definition television for TNA.
Okay. From my perspective, I was, you know, I'm going to give you're going to ask me what time it is. I'm going to tell you how to build a clock on this one. No, the quick version is I was always engaged, even at Channel 5 Studios, you know, how these 3 cameras, 4 cameras, this and that. Then I went to, you know, the Tennessee and Texas, and we're on ESPN, you know, creating that. And it's kind of the same thing, but it's just produced different and all that. But that's a nationally syndicated show, the ESPN USWA Texas shows. Then you move to WWE, and that's a global show, and that's a whole different world. Titan Studios and all, you know, so all along the way, I got my education for the most part on how television's produced and shot, and it's a lifetime of experience. When I guess you could say the FCC, they're the ones, I may be wrong on that, Conrad, but whoever made the decision that all programming has to convert to HD, whatever that ruling was. Okay. So an NBC, a CBS, all the networks, or a high ranking TBS, TNT, that those guys, they got the money to convert in its normal course of business. When you get down, Spike is a second tier network in the Viacom family, but then you get down even lower than that. It was a real issue. I mean, to go back into this era, I mean, it was, like you said, enormously expensive. It was a real process. And so when it came to, little old TNA, who had been on Spike not that long, scratching and clawing, we understood real quick. We hired an outside firm and our studio, and it's an education process, but, and Spike leaned into it for us. They helped on certain levels, but we had to redo our studio, a studio that wasn't that old. But the conversion was very expensive. And it is something that when you go back and see the library today, folks, if you see bars on the sides of any kind of film, that's standard def, shot in standard def. And so when you had to convert everything, it just changed. It changed everything production wise. And so I'm glad nowadays I got to walk through that process. That's where, certain guys that are in this business now, I got the education, the hard knocks education, but also there's so much more than just to go into the ring and ding, ding, ding. As a talent, you got to understand production. If you don't, you're incomplete talent. Yeah, Connie, very expensive, a huge step for us. Spike was very good with us and to us during this time frame because they kind of understood. Also on their side, we can't have a primetime programming that's at the top of our food chain in standard def. We've got to figure this out and figure it out. I don't say kind of quick. We all had notice, but it was a process getting everything upgraded.
Let's also mention it's in the Observer that the video game that TNA put out is underperforming based on the initial expectations, and it's not going to be in the top 50 of games that were sold in the US. If you're watching along with us, you can see some of the graphics here of an X Division match, the Ultimate X. I mean, listen, this is for a lot of people. They used to think, man, if you could get a video game, that was like the holy grail. I remember what a big deal it was, when these new systems would come out and the new games would come out. And now it's got to be like a dream come true. There was an ECW game and WCW games and a WWE game, and now there's a TNA game, but it's not doing as well as we would have hoped. Talk to us about the video game.
Conrad, I never heard those words.
Really?
I honestly, I never heard. Look, you always want more sales, but I always heard we are selling. Never heard, oh, they're great. We're selling good. Could they be better? Yes. Are you happy? Very happy. We have the building blocks. We have something that came out of the gate. We have a brand that's growing. We can grow together. We're going to get the ROI, all those kind of positive things that you want to hear, not fluff. I mean, when you hear we will make I think the words, we will make a franchise out of this. Wow. I never heard that's where, but that's okay. I mean, that's bad news travels fast. Good news travels slow.
Johnny Devine finds himself released after Bound for Glory, and according to the Observer, he actually requested it more than a month prior, but the agreement was he would finish up at Bound for Glory. Devine has said in interviews that he didn't feel like he had any upward mobility here in TNA. What were your feelings on Devine, and how'd you feel when he asked for a release?
Johnny's a hell of a heel, a good talent. But this got me thinking, looking through research, that everybody in TNA, as far as talent, and the office as well, they knew that we didn't have unlimited spots, that we really can only have a finite number. And I think they began to understand kind of the philosophy that was put into place that if you keep the same roster year after year after year, you could get real stale, and it's not like it's like a loaf of bread. If one piece of bread is stale, it kind of permeates through the loaf. And so change is good. And Johnny, and there's other guys that would come up and say, hey man, I think I got to go. Now others said it differently, whether bitching or angry or screw this, I'm out of here. But at the end of the day, they kind of saw, okay, the upward mobility, there's X amount of spots that, you look at the top of, the AJ Styles of the world that were on top of the homegrown talent. And then you look over, we'll call it on the established veterans that, okay, there's not a spot for me. And Johnny was one of those, was smart enough to kind of look in the mirror and say, hey man, I've enjoyed my time, but it's probably better off I move on. That was the reality. And he wasn't the only one, but it's not for lack of talent. It's for truly lack of opportunity for a lot of guys. The opportunity just wasn't going to be there. The decisions were continually being made and reevaluated. We're going to put our best foot forward.
Let me ask you something. I saw this a couple of days ago. Dave Meltzer did like an Observer Radio, and he quoted the former UFC matchmaker, really sort of the guy who deserves a lot of the credit for the success of Dana White's UFC. Maybe you might even call him almost like a Pat Patterson.
Joe
Silva.
Joe Silva, yes. The stories, I need to tell you a few offline that I've heard. I love that you give the Pat Patterson analogy.
I think he's the Pat Patterson of the UFC. He's the secret sauce. He understood how to make stars, how to promote stars, how to get people over. He had clearly studied wrestling, but also, boxing, and I clearly knew MMA.
Yes. Yes.
Here's a quote from Dave Meltzer where he's sort of paraphrasing, I believe, Joe Silva. Again, he's the UFC matchmaker. He's since retired, but Meltzer said something like this: AEW, they have so many people under contract. Joe Silva would tell me we could have 300 people and 50 under contract. We're still only going to have 10 stars either way because you can only get a certain number of people over. WWE understands this. So I'm not asking you to comment on WWE or AEW, but I'm going to try to apply what he said there to the TNA conversation with respect to what you were just explaining about Johnny Devine. You can have an infinite roster, but you have a finite amount of promotional opportunity. Said more specifically, a finite amount of television time. So if you take the formula for an old Monday Night Raw, start with Stone Cold, an in-ring promo, backstage segment with promo with Stone Cold in the crossover. Maybe there's some physicality or a run-in, and we're going to finish with the main event with Stone Cold. That is how the formula worked to make Stone Cold. We're going to get him, we'll call it touches, 3 or 4 touches a show, and have a story-long thread. And ultimately, that sort of thing is what beat Nitro. When they started with the McMahon Stone Cold thread, carried it all the way through the show. Backstage shots of McMahon, backstage shots of Stone Cold. We continue to build and build and build and build like it was a movie. And the payoff is the last segment. And that formula won the race and won the Monday Night War for the WWE for the first time in 83 weeks over Monday Nitro. So I'm saying all that to say, as you find yourself now trying to build a company years later, what do you think when you think about, in an effort to build TNA, Joe Silva's stance of, it doesn't matter if you have 50 people under contract or 300, you're still just going to have 10 over. Do you believe that?
Oh, well, and I want to make sure, because I'm going to kind of preface this in that I know you don't, goal alignment. I think because the natural thing I think you went to, I don't want you to talk about WWE or AEW, and I'm not, but I think there's a method to the madness, whether it's UFC, whether it's WWE, whether it's AEW, on
what's the goal?
what's the goal? Where are we going with this? If you have the capital to have 200 or 300 people under contract, more power to you, because it kind of sets you up for not just injuries in the flow of all this, but you get to a point where you're not only developing talent, but you are really preparing for the future, if you know what I mean. But the financial situation predicates so much of that. At TNA, in this set of circumstances, not to get into the finances, because we've talked about that, that just wasn't there. But the philosophy that Joe Silva had is the exact same philosophy, I believe, that every territory promoter had.
Yes.
Because when you look at journeyman wrestling or whatever it may be, I can't tell you how many times Jerry Lawler, and a lot of times happen on a Tuesday or Wednesday. Tuesday, he's driving from Memphis to Louisville, so that's a 6-hour jaunt, or, you know, whatever. But Lawler always had more time on his hands, not being at Memphis, other markets he could. He'd walk in, and if me and him were dressing beside ourselves, or, you know, whatever, he'd just say, Jeff, we got to get some new talent in here. This shit's making us stale. And I didn't understand that early, but my dad, and again, he learned this. Eddie Graham was a believer. Anyway, I think all the territory promoters, if you do not keep a fresh roster, it is stale bread. It's just how the product is viewed. It's just, you know, that's the reality of entertainment in so many ways, not just wrestling. And then kind of on the flip side of that, we're getting into the philosophy of the shows. You were bringing up Stone Cold Steve Austin. Conrad, do you watch football game highlights? Or let me just get right to it. Did you happen to see the Minnesota Vikings highlights from this past weekend?
I missed it.
So they're having quarterback issues and injuries on this. Josh Dobbs, a former Vol, anyway, QB, journeyman. He's played for Steelers, both this. He was out at the Cardinals. He got traded to the Minnesota Vikings. He arrived in Minneapolis on Wednesday.
Yep.
4 days before the game.
Yes.
He didn't know players when he stepped on the field. He didn't even know their name. He stayed with the OC on Friday for 5 hours. They learned the playbook, all this. He comes out, they win.
Wow.
I say all this to say, when you kind of know that story as a thread, how can you not love the guy? You're emotionally invested in it. I say that I think without threads,
nobody gets invested.
It's impossible to get invested in the simple bell to bell.
I see.
Yeah. And so I'm going back to the amount of time and space that you have on a show, on a 2-hour show. It's Joe Silva quote. You're only really going to be able to get. That's why I even narrow that down. And I know he has weight classes, so he came up with 10. I think in wrestling, it's even fewer.
4
stars, needle movers.
How many? How many do you think a promotion can have?
I thought you said, that.
I mean, what's the number? I mean, if it's not 10, in your opinion, is it 4? Is it 6? Is it 8? What is it? Like
5 to 7.
Okay, so talk to me about that. And I know we're getting off track here, but if it's 5 to 7, how many of that is a baby face? How many of that's a heel?
I think that's situational. Now, this is obviously IMO in my opinion only, but
it is the name of the show is My World.
Okay.
So it's your opinion.
You are poking fun at a guy who's post-op.
No, I'm not poking fun. I'm just saying your opinion is the only one people listening really care about.
Pardon the words. I didn't mean the pun. Poking, as in the dentist. Okay, I'm kidding.
Yes.
Trying to make light of it, pal. Getting on a plane here.
I would think I don't know shit about wrestling, so let me just take your
temperature. You do. Don't ever say that. You're in the Hall of Fame and you're in a video game.
That's true. I would think more heels, less baby faces.
Ooh.
Because I assume you're only going to have room for a couple of top baby faces, but they can't wrestle the same guys over and over. They got to have more dance partners.
Oh, see, Conrad, you talk about getting down into the nitty gritty.
I'm thinking Hogan era. You know what I mean? Like, there's the one tippy top who stands, and even WCW tried that with Sting to some level, to some degree. You know, because Sting had to wrestle Cactus Jack, Sting had to wrestle Vader. You know, so he's got to have a variety of quote unquote over heels.
Has Bruce ever done a fantastic JArrett impersonation about Dragon and Dragon Slayers?
Several.
About Dragon and Dragon Slayers?
I know that the most recent person I heard about Dragon and Dragon Slayers, and he went in great detail, was Kevin Sullivan. So I know that is an old school territory approach. Yes. Yeah.
But, oh boy, the other old school approach, and I hate to even say it, old school approach is heels draw money.
Yeah.
Baby faces sell merch and all. We go into it. But I believe ultimately you got to have more dragons
than slayers.
My bad. No, you got to have more dragon slayers. But
okay, wow. All right.
I think you kind of got to have that. Doesn't mean they get all the TV time,
right?
By any stretch. I think the dragons got to have the TV time to build the antagonist. I'm a big believer in that. You have to have your antagonists focused. I have not seen this been disproven. You know, a lot of people, when you look at Roman Reigns' run right now, you call him a protagonist or an antagonist, heel or babyface.
Yeah, he's a heel.
Big time.
Yeah.
Think about the focus they put on him the last 2 years.
Yeah. And by the way, not a ton of TV time.
But no, that's only in the last year. Think about the build.
No, I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying
I got you.
It's sort of like priming a pump.
He got to a level before they primed the pump.
Well, I'm with you. I'm just saying, I want to give this analogy because I know some people, they don't grow up in the South. They don't know what the shit pump is. But the reality is, like, we're thinking about in terms of a well, if you're trying to pump water, you never know exactly how long you're going to have to pump this thing before the water starts coming.
There you go.
So you're pumping fast and furiously on blind faith that there is eventually going to be water. And if you ever stop pumping, well, that water goes all the way back down to the bottom. You never get any water at all. Yep. But if you keep pumping fast and furious, eventually it will start to produce water. And then once it starts to produce water, you don't have to pump as fiercely anymore. Now it just takes a little slow and easy pressure. That's what they did with Roman Reigns. They pumped like hell for years and years and years. And then when it finally started to bear fruit, now they can just do a little slow and easy pressure.
But he's a heel.
Yes.
I think there's some real magic in that right now. But anyway, we're getting off track. But
Logan Paul's a heel. I'm just thinking, I think you got to have more. I would think you got to have more heels, but I understand what you're saying, that you got to have more babies.
We're splitting hairs here. So if we're saying seven, so
it's 4 on one side, 3 on the other.
Yeah, or 3-4. That's what I'm saying. We're kind of splitting hairs. And I also think I do believe in the Vince McMahon would not agree with this, and probably a lot of validity to it. I think you got to have, like in the Attitude Era, I think you pull Brian or Billy or China or X-Pac, you pull any of them out of DX, it's not the same. I think that group and Stone Cold, and you can throw Rock in there. You know, I think it was a different menu of. So I'm not saying you have to have 4 singles and 3 singles. I think tags, groups, and I think females can. I mean, I think they can all fit in the picture, especially where the business is at today.
I know a lot of people are wondering, hey, how did we get down on this rabbit hole? We got here because you made a pretty astute observation that Johnny Devine recognized.
Yes.
Hey, I'm not going to be in one of those spots. Those spots are full. And I talked about this not too long ago with Eric Bischoff, where it's like, you take a look at the top of WCW when they were really on top, and it's so crowded. You know, Sting, Luger, Hall, Nash, Piper, Flair, Hogan, Savage, DDP, on and on and on and on. Goldberg. It's like, how do you fit them all in there?
You don't.
How can you make everyone happy? And I think the biggest gripe and knock on WCW in that era was, we have all this great talent that you're not moving up. you've got the Juventudes and the Rey Mysterios and the Benoits and the Malenkos and the Jerichos, and they're sort of stuck where they are. But I think there's wisdom in what Silva was saying, in that, hey, you can only ever have 10 guys over because you only have so much TV time. So if you're trying to super serve that audience and you've got this loaded roster, it's sort of the chicken and the egg conversation with like that rookie quarterback contract. We're paying them all this money. We got to play him. So it's like, if you're paying your top guys that, you got to justify to the people who ultimately make those decisions, AKA Turner at the time, you got to put them on TV. And I think there's a lot of that going on now where people are saying, man, I really want to see this guy, or I want to see that guy. Why aren't they moving this guy or that guy up? Well, perhaps there's just not a spot there. And I feel like guys like, I know we're talking about current stuff, but guys like Miro and other people who maybe were frustrated with their lot in life on the WWE side of things, they probably recognize what Johnny Devine did. For whatever reason, they don't see me in one of those positions. I'll try my hand in AEW. And by the way, that works. Cody Rhodes did it, and now he's back and setting the world on fire. So I just think that's fascinating that we're having that conversation about recognizing there's a finite amount of spots here.
And you know what has kind of, thanks to the Podfather, thanks to my partner, you used the phrase, Jeff, for the lack of a better word, there were really 22 small business owners.
Yeah.
Okay. Small business owners sweep the floor, put up the ring. They don't have a big accounting firm or a finance partner. They do the taxes themselves.
Yeah.
They carry the load. They know every nook and cranny of their business.
That's
Mr.
right.
Crockett used to run and profess. My office is in my front coat pocket. I mean, that was my dad's. He loved that about him. You know, my dad never had a big corporate office. It was on the other side of his house. He always did that. I say all that to say they're not in a position to carry 50 people and book 20.
Right. Can't do it.
A publicly traded company can get by with that, but a privately heavily capitalized company can, because their goals are different. It goes back into, I guess the simple term would be, hey, Mr. Silva, now I know that you can only put 10 on TV, but as a matchmaker, as a booker, how big a roster would you like to have?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's just, I don't know. It's a fun discussion, but when you said small business owner, I'm thinking, yep. Johnny Devine looked at it through the lens of a small business owner mentality.
Yes.
And TNA Entertainment doesn't have the ability to carry me.
Well, we don't have a hard on for Johnny Devine, but you can have a hard on for whoever you like. Thanks to our friends at BlueChew.com. If you haven't already tried this, what are you waiting for? Blue Chew is a unique online service that's going to give you the stroke, daddy. Gives you the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. It's going to make your wiener so hard it's going to hit like a guitar over the head. You can take these dudes anytime, day or night, so plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. And the process is simple. You sign up at BlueChew.com, you consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, man, you get your prescription just within a couple days. And here's the best part. It's all done online. So no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Oh, by the way, these tablets from Blue Chew are made in the USA. That's right. They're good old red, white, and blue chew. It's prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. So discover your options at BlueChew.com. Chew it and do it. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code MyWorld at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code MyWorld to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast and Jeff's wiener. You know, we're not going to have an abscess and an extraction and an implant there, are we? Wiener's still good.
Ask Karen.
Yeah, well, we'll find out. So listen, it's reported that the character Suicide has been put on hold because Frankie Kazarian is going to have surgery on his triceps. What did you think of the idea of the character, the name, and Kazarian being the guy under the mask?
This goes as a segue from the Johnny Devine, situation. Me and you've talked at length about our thoughts on Frankie and loved him as a talent.
Yes.
Absolutely. He's a guy that you look at and go, Frankie has been around, but I damn sure don't want to lose him.
Right.
But hey, man, you know what? Put him over here and Frankie can always come back. And that way that's exactly how I looked at Chris Daniels from time to time. He could play Spicy Curry Man. I mean, so damn entertaining, but also it gave the character of Chris Daniels to a break. So that was kind of the philosophy of, my dad going back, and we could come up in territory days. A guy like Tony Falk gave me my first match. My dad repackaged him 15 times because Tony could take young green talent and have a hell of a match, and he'd put them over every night, and it worked. Just kind of the formula to do that. As far as the character, that was my idea. I hate to start doing that, but when I was working with Midway, you hear about this and all that. I'm like, hey, this is a real chance here, because most of the time wrestlers are turned into video game characters. Is this an opportunity to take a video game character that was born out of the brains of writing a wrestling video game? Can we make him? They were like, can you do that? Will you do that? So yeah, I loved the idea. I think it could be done today. I think on multiple levels. I think there's a real uniqueness. You can't overdo it, but I love the idea. And Frankie was the guy to do it. And he had surgery during this time, but he could do it.
So, of course, the Impact out for Bound for Glory, the big pay-per-view, it's all about the formation of the Main Event Mafia. You've got Kurt Angle out here destroying 4 different X Division wrestlers to get a rematch with you. Kevin Nash explaining that he decided to turn on Samoa Joe when he cut that promo back in December about Scott Hall. And Sting, the new TNA champion, going to say that Joe was a better man at Bound for Glory, but he left as champion. And AJ is going to come out and slap Sting twice before a big pull apart. How pumped were you to get this Main Event Mafia rolling out here?
Internally, it was a little echo there. It just worked, because as things begin to progress and you kind of look at, and I even, as we get into it, I don't want to jump far ahead, but we already kind of saw that, okay, is Kurt the leader, or with Sting's kind of got longevity or tenure on him. Booker could step in there. He's been around a while. Oh, of course, Big Daddy has it. It was like such a unique group that was forming organically. I hate to say that, but that's real. When we hired all 5 of them, we didn't have this master plan at all. But when you took a step back and look of where we felt we needed to go, that, hey, man, there's a little bit of a feeling out there that we're too top heavy on the non-originals. And then you kind of look at the other side of the fence and go, AJ's put his time in here, and Joe's put his time in here, and Eric Young and Motor City Machine Guns and Bobby Roode, and just kind of this whole group that, I think we're going to kind of find out in a storyline way that, okay, who's going to rise to the top? It just kind of fit organically. Now, me as a businessman and my on-screen character was morphing into the founder. We didn't really want to call me the matchmaker, or certainly not the booker or any of that, the founder, but just the story worked. And then you throw Mick Foley in the middle of all this, because he is of the era of the Legends, but he's a huge supporter. It all it fit in a real way. I hate to use that term, but in an authentic way.
One of the other things I wanted to bring up that we've never really talked about here on the show is this episode after Bound for Glory, that first Impact afterwards, is the one where we see Kurt Angle attack Dave Penzer. No other way to say it. He beat the shit out of Dave Penzer. There was an elbow that he threw, and I just retweeted it, and you can go check my Twitter out at Hey, it's Conrad. And then he drug him in the ring.
Was it an elbow or a punch?
I thought it was an elbow, but it may have been. All I know is my man Dave Penzer's face swelled up something serious. He had a bruise on his face, and you could tell he crumbles, and Kurt leans down, says something to him, gets him in the ring, beats him with a shoe, slaps on the ankle lock. The damage is done. He crumbled on the outside. We've seen a lot of snug and stiff stuff in wrestling. This was a damn assault. What do you remember about this?
I wasn't watching it live. And the first, I don't know, my first introduction or first realization is seeing Dave Penzer. Conrad, what a goose egg. If I remember correctly, that's how I'm like, what the hell? Yeah.
I mean, he looked like a chipmunk.
It's real. It's damn real.
Did Penzer owe Kurt money?
I was gonna say I don't to this day. But no, and Penzer, from what I recall, he probably will dispute it, but I just remember him taking it very professional. Not that he had a choice to get up and beat Kurt's ass, but you know, he there wasn't a lot of bitching and complaining. Very professional. When maybe he didn't have to be, is the best way for me to put it.
Well, yeah, listen, I mean, it ain't ballet is the phrase that Bruce Pritchard likes to use a lot, but yeah, he took his lump. My goodness, though, I'm sure it was a total accident, and at the same time, Kurt's probably used to more movement in the course of a match versus a guy just.
Yes. And that is not to defend Kurt, but sometimes when you work with non-wrestler folks, you go, all right, they don't know how to sell. They may not sell back. There's a lot of ins and outs. I got to make this look good. You got to protect not only the business, but yourself and all that. So you don't mind being a little snug. With Kurt's mallet for hands, he was real snug or stiff, or he threw a hell of a potato. There's no if, ands, or buts about on this one.
It's unbelievable. Go check it out on my social. I think you'll dig it. A lot of other segments on this show. One where Mick Foley admits to being a junkie, a roller coaster junkie. And he says his TNA time has been the ride of his life, but it's going to be soon coming to an end. He's only been with the company for like 3 weeks. And the show ends with you and Mick getting into a car. And you say you're driving to Las Vegas. And Mick says he has an announcement next week that will change wrestling. The episode does a 1.1 rating, which is 1.5 million viewers. And we're building towards a big live show on Spike. Spike moves the Saturday replay, where you've been getting a decent audience, to Saturday morning. Did you have any control over that, or do you know why?
Two things on that I wanted to point out when I read the research. I think if you look at 1.1, 1.5 million viewers, this is October of 2008. By end of Q1, beginning into Q2 of 2009, we had grown the audience consistently by a couple of 100,000 viewers. So I just say that this is where we started with the Main Event Mafia, and then to where we go. So that was something that, hey, did the Main Event Mafia, why is Jeff and Conrad always talking about the success or whatever it may be? This is kind of where we started and where we go. So we were very aware that we wanted to get it up, and it wasn't going to happen overnight. So it was a slow, gradual build, but I say over quarters. That's why I've always said, look at ratings over quarters and half years and maybe year over year, like the networks do. Week to week will drive you crazy. But the move to Saturday morning, that was a strategic play. I was lobbying for 2 replays, one on Saturday morning, one on Saturday night, and see what does better. It's a completely different, just viewing habits, completely different. And again, how do we help grow our audience? Can we find some Saturday morning folks? That's their traditional, hate to say traditional, but the Saturday morning wrestling slot worked for years and years and years. So that was kind of the mindset. And guys at Spike said, let's give it a shot. We'll run it Saturday mornings and see what kind of numbers.
Somebody else who's going to be moving around a little bit is BG James, your pal, the Road Dog. you're going to be transitioning him to a road agent role. Why were you making this move, or why was he interested in making this move at this point?
He was ready. He wanted to, you look at where he's at now. This is the very beginning of, hey man, my long-term career is not between the ropes. I may be able to talk. I may be able to still hippie shake and do some of that, but I'm better off producing, directing, laying things out, working with talent, working with a vision, all those kind of things. This was, I can't say the beginning, but yeah, I think this was the first action step that he took on going behind the camera.
And he does this, I think, at like 39 years old.
I'm telling you, Brian, he just doesn't. And I know this is, my buddy and everything that goes with it, but he, literally from the very beginning, his days of the roadie, he would say, hey man, I'm watching this, and why don't we, growing up around Pep. I mean, his dad and brothers, and hearing car talks and his dad talk, and his dad was not only a talent, but a promoter as well, and a booker and all that. Brian just from the very beginning always looked at the business not as a talent, more from a producer and a what if and all that. And so he came by natural, if you will. But yeah, he wanted to get behind the camera really as soon as he could.
Let's talk about somebody who can't wait to get back in front of the camera. It's reported that Ric Flair has left the WWE and now could be wrestling again. Just a few months after his unbelievable retirement match with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, people are having conversations like he regrets it. He wants to do something. Is this on your radar? Are you reaching out? Is he reaching out to you? What do you recall?
Conrad, this may sound crazy, but I said in 2008, man, there is absolutely no way you can top that.
Yeah.
It's an impossibility. I'm talking about is an in-ring talent. I'm not talking about anything else. I'm talking about stepping between the ropes, ding, ding, just everything that went with it. The super kick, the build, the drama, the family at ringside. You don't get any bigger, especially from I call it his era, the transition from territories to the golden age of cable television and on. And, we're kind of at peak cable television right now, right before all the streaming services. It was peak. And what a hell of a match. I laughed when I'm like, no, he's done. They'll bring him back and he'll be the ambassador. I always thought he would be an ambassador for WWE for life. In 2008, we're going back into Double J's brain. I thought he'd be an ambassador for WWE for life. Little did I know that my wife would hit him with a heel and he'd yell hard way, and you would shake your head like you're shaking your head right now.
I wasn't there.
And then you'd say, yeah, we're going to make some money come this August.
July 31st in Nashville.
That's it, July 31st.
The Jay Lethal promo. He was old school, man. He knew you say the date and the town over and over and over.
There you go.
You guys were saying the date and the town a lot during your live Las Vegas special with Mike Goldberg, plugging the UFC audience with your information about your show. So back in this era, you're not on Spike by yourself. You're also there with the UFC. So we're going to try to see if there's some cross promotion we can do here. How was it working with the UFC? Did you ever get to interact with Mike Goldberg? Did you ever have any conversations with him? We know once upon a time, McMahon tried to bring him to Raw. Did you ever talk to Mike?
No, I mean, it was all done through Spike, all the UFC kind of collaboration. And I think, UFC obviously in a completely different place now. Well, even double completely. I saw that. I love the comment that Dana made. Vince is a completely different, or however.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, yeah, Dana, that lion of the jungle is on your side now. If you're on the other side, he is carnivorous, to say the least. But UFC, what, 2008? They're really 6-7 years old into their growth. No, they're older than that. But I'm saying the Spike. When did Spike? When did that happen? Whenever the reality show happened. The
Ultimate Fighter reality show was 05.
Okay. And that's okay. So they're 3 years. Wow. Anyway, they were in a different place, but they were always fantastic. Kevin, as in Kevin K, from time to time, but they're like, yeah, we're going to get them to help us here. And they did. Really good partners.
We should mention that when your show is going to be live from Las Vegas, it's at the Hard Rock and it's your debut in HD. The show is going to be built around revealing what was in Booker T's briefcase and Mick Foley's major announcement. The show gets a 1.1 rating, the exact same as the week before. Now, the Torch says some of this might be because of it being up against the World Series. What do you think? Is there such a thing as, we know competition's real. We see that every Saturday night with Collision. I feel like if, hey, is there a World Series? Is there a major football game? Like there's always some sort of major heads up competition on a night like that. How big of a factor do you think the World Series was for TNA back in the day?
I can't ever say none. And this is just, for the lack of a better word, news and sports is always going on. And there is some validity. You can't completely discount it. But the major things that affect, I've always thought, and this is where you kind of get back into the Attitude Era, is when you make the wrestling audience, which it is mainstream and pop culture, it's still a niche audience when you make them decide which wrestling show to watch. So World Series, CNN special, Fox News special, football, basketball, baseball, all of that can affect you. I'll say minimally affect you. Other wrestling content affects you.
We know that ultimately you guys are going to have your best overall audience since July and the best 18 to 49 male demo since January. The Main Event Mafia segment itself does a 1.31. It's one of the most watched segments in TNA history.
Think about that. I mean, yeah, really just landing on that. Okay, for sure, people hung around enough to watch this.
You're, of course, establishing that Mick Foley is the most frugal wrestler ever, and you're sort of asking him money to help fund TNA. And Wade Keller would say, since they established how cheap and frugal Foley is, well, fans now wonder if Foley's storyline ownership role in TNA will lead to major budget cuts, low pay for wrestlers, no more catering, cuts in production values, and other frugal management decisions. The show closed with TNA recapping the happenings on the show as the Mafia stared back at Foley in the ring. And TNA said TNA hit the jackpot tonight. So I guess that's the idea here, is that, Main Event Mafia comes out, Kurt's going to headbutt, and Foley's going to make the announcement that he has made a major investment in TNA, and now he's the major shareholder in the company. And do you think this was well explained, the Main Event Mafia and Foley and how they all are aligned here?
Look, I'd like to go back and watch it. Wade's interpretation is what a journalist, and I get that, it's his job. And look, I get the sense, I don't have exact recollection, but me and Mick in a creative room, and I'd say, Mick, I know you want to get a point across, you want to get across the point that for you to make a financial investment, storyline driven, that it's a big deal. But if you point out how frugal you are, it may be taken out of context and may add to a little bit of comedy. And maybe it might be best to kind of leave that out and just say I'm putting my money where my mouth is because I believe in this place. That was the whole mindset that Mick, a legendary wrestler, less than 10 years removed from Hell in a Cell, a Hall of Fame career, been around the world, New York Times bestselling, just all of his accolades. And then, okay, why is he at TNA? Why is he here? Well, he's here because he believes in what we're doing, in the direction we're going, and most importantly, the youthful talent, the AJ Styles. He was going to be a very strong voice in promo segments for the young guns. That was kind of his role, and I was going to try to be that founder voice of reason that I could go either way. So that was the whole mindset. Was it explained perfectly? Maybe, maybe not. But Tanae's comment seems out of context if you read Wade's report verbatim and word for word and as is. But in the reality is, Tanae was kind of the icing on the cake to validate, all right, we got Mick Foley. Wrestling fans, you know him, and more importantly, you believe what he says. He's on board with the team. And this also gives him, I don't think he was a major shareholder. He was a shareholder. It gives him not just a wrestler voting power, it gives him ownership voting power. And the powers that be in Dallas are giving him matchmaking control or whatever it may be. We never wanted to clearly define who had more power, me or Mick. It was kind of ambiguous, but it's all storyline driven to kind of give the direction because we were the protagonist to the Main Event Mafia.
Let's also mention that this show has an interesting gimmick match. Fans are going to get to text in to determine the order of the gauntlet match for tag teams. And then during the match, fans could text in what weapon they wanted to be legal, whether it was a table, a ladder, or a chair. It's an interesting idea. I know you're looking for engagement. Were you also using this to collect cell phone numbers?
Spike. This is all Spike. They wanted engagement. 2008 is Twitter just launched.
Around that,
yeah. All of it was new. How do we get real time engagement? This was going to be our only opportunity. I'll say only. We were live, so how do you? We weren't live very often. We were going to be doing on pay-per-views, but since we were going to be live, how do we get actual data in?
So we know that
and yes,
we're also debuting a new TV or a new championship, rather, a new title. Booker T is going to reveal the Legends Championship. I have heard from the belt maker community, this is the most expensive belt TNA ever had made. This was a very costly belt to make, lots of hand set, quote unquote, gemstones there. And Meltzer speculating the plan for this title is to help elevate the younger talent by working with Booker. Was that the plan? And did you think TNA needed another title on top of the world title in the X division? Or is this more a function of, hey, it's another thing to sell gimmicks around?
Oh, okay. So I was for it right out of the gate in that in the creative rooms, you had the world title and the tag title. You didn't have an IC, you didn't have US, you didn't have a TV title. We came up with all of the stuff that had been around for years, the secondary title. Going into this storyline, how do we create it is a secondary title, however you look at it.
Yes.
To kind of buy into it. And what's a different way? I'm not a big fan on tournaments. So, what's a different way? And in Booker's pompous, arrogant character that he had, he's a legend, but kind of the whole vision was we've got 5 Main Event Mafia members and other legends that had been used in the past and will be probably used in the future, in that you create a storyline with a vet versus an up-and-comer. And when the up-and-comer wins the title, they don't say, I'm a legend. They say, I aspire to be a legend, and I'm going to defend this because, we'll just call it babyface A over here, the legends in my mind, and let them call out their 3, 4, 5 favorite legends. I hope to be that one day, and I'm going to defend this with honor. Then the heel screws them out of it, and we keep moving, telling stories. That was kind of the general deal. I chuckle when you expert belt maker collectors, it was the most expensive one. boy, if that isn't a sign of the times that, building a company, okay, this belt is going to cost this much. Hey, man, can we reduce that? We ain't paying that much. Okay, we'll cut it here. Okay, we'll cut it here. Well, and we're on 2 hours. I guess the negotiation, I was not part of any of it, Conrad. So it's funny to hear you say the most expensive belt ever made in TNA.
You want to guess how much it costs?
I would love. Oh, guess. See, I'm just horrible at that.
I'll just say over or under, and I won't give you the number because I probably shouldn't share.
Okay.
I'll type it in the thing. But go ahead, guess the number.
You said the most. 7,500.
Look at your chat. How about that?
I got to go, Conrad.
You ever spend that on a car? I mean,
Conrad, let's go back to the beginning of this.
I know.
I'm coming out of major surgery. And you could care less of how, hey, Jeff, how's your jaw feel? Are you okay? Hey, man, what was more painful, that checkbook or your jaw?
Well, I knew it was one of those. I know this is not painful, though. Factor's got Double J eating good every single day, and they will for you, too. Factor is America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. They can hook you up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, all with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals that are delivered straight to your door. Here's the thing. You need to take care of yourself. You need to eat better. But what if you could also find a way that not only was better for you, it was faster, it was cheaper, and it tasted better? Factor can help you do all that. They'll help you skip the trip to the grocery store. You can even skip all the chopping and prepping and cleaning up too. You've got Factor's fresh, never frozen meals ready for you in just 2 minutes. All you have to do is heat and enjoy, and you're back at it. Seriously, it's that simple. You slide the carton off, you poke some holes in the plastic on top, slide it in your microwave, and in 2 minutes later, boom, you're hooked up. They've got something for everybody. You can choose from 35 weekly, flavor-packed, fresh, never frozen meals that all promote a healthy lifestyle. Again, already in just 2 minutes. How about some of these fall flavors? Cranberry pecan chicken, apple Dijon pork chops, already in just 2 minutes. They've got gourmet plus options. You can get the fancy stuff like truffle butter and broccolini and leeks and asparagus. How about the stuff for lunch that can hook you up there too? And I know what you're thinking. What if I don't have a microwave at work? No problem. They got lunch to go. They got grain bowls and salad toppers. Maybe you're trying to drop some LBs. Can I recommend the Calorie Smart section? Yeah, they've got meals that are less than 550 calories. Maybe you're like Double J, trying to bulk up, add some mass. Well, Protein Plus can hook you up. 30 grams of protein or more per serving. As I mentioned, they can handle breakfast too. How about some apple cinnamon pancakes or bacon and cheddar egg bites? They've even got all the add-ons for your snacks, cold pressed juices, shakes, smoothies, everything you're looking for. Factor is America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. And you're going to get to enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered right to your door, ready in just 2 minutes. No prep, no mess. My experience has been, it's faster, it's cheaper, it's better for me, and it tastes better than takeout. That's all you need to know. Head right now to factormeals.com/myworld50. Use the code myworld50, get yourself 50% off. That's code myworld50 at factormeals.com/myworld50. Man, 50% off. How do you beat that? All right. So let's talk about, we've got
outlaw rolling. I'm just telling you on the Factor. I've heard from a lot of chatter folks that, Factor is being good to us. Well, I'm being good to them. I can assure you that. They keep me rolling. Guys, and I'm talking to you, my world listeners out there. This ain't a testimony. This is a spitting facts. It is a great option. Pop it in the microphone, 2 minutes, you got your meal.
I'm telling you, if you're one of those guys, and we all do this, it's a fun thing for guys to do at the office. We go to lunch together. You take a look at what you're eating and what you're paying, and then you take a look at what you could be eating and what you could be paying with Factor. It's a no-brainer. What we've started to do is say, you know what? Let's just have lunch at our desk. We're more effective. We're more productive. We're eating better. It tastes better. It's better for us, and it's cheaper. It's Factor, man. Check it out. You're going to love it. Booker and Christian are going to kind of promo on each other. They're setting up a match at Turning Point. So after Meltzer says we're going to use this to try to build up future legends, Booker's wrestling another WWE Hall of Famer. All right,
he's exiting. He's exiting.
We've also got the X Division title. It's on the line that night with Sheik defending against Jay Lethal. Sheik's going to win in 2 minutes. The Knockouts title is going to change hands in 3 minutes when Awesome Kong picks it up from Taylor Wilde. And the show is over here. You know, this is your live show in Vegas. You're out of the impact zone. What'd you think about doing the live show in Vegas? Did you like that?
Oh, I did. No, I mean, look, it's so hard to go back in time to kind of create the picture, but the little engine that could, and Spike put a lot of money into this. We kicked off the high def era here. We kicked off with a big angle with the Main Event Mafia. Mick was on board. That was I'll call it kind of the old brother word momentum. Things were rolling. And look, the Joint, that's the name of the Hard Rock venue. Is it ideal? Not at all. It's a music venue.
Yeah.
So many things could have been done better with the look, but it's load in, load out. It was what it was. But as far as the different feel, it just kind of made it a very natural transition, not just to the HD, but when at the time we were saying, all right, we got to take things. God, we said this so many different times. We got to take things to another level. Let's kick it up a notch and let's be innovative with it. I just think the audiences today, they are more so than ever. They are so educated and so quick to say, been there, done that. Doing something different is very hard, but the Joint did it for us. The Hard Rock Show did it for us.
The next week, with Mick in charge officially and the Main Event Mafia now officially named, the show goes up to a 1.2 rating, up from a 1.1. This is the first time we're back in the impact zone. It's been totally redesigned for high def. So we got some bigger screens and, step in the right direction. It looks nice. But then on the actual show, we're going to see the Motor City Machine Guns, one of the most underrated and greatest tag teams there ever was. Go out of your way to see them. Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin were just fantastic. And they're going to be taking on a couple of guys here.
Hard to believe, right?
Including Tanahashi.
Mm-hmm.
Tanahashi was in TNA in 2008. And Vince Russo made sure that Tanahashi lost to the Motor City Machine Guns in under 4 minutes. A stipulation is added to Booker versus Christian, where if Christian loses, he would have to join the Mafia. Sting comes out and gets into a promo battle with Mick Foley. It's the second week in a row we've seen Sting with no face paint on, and he's in a suit. And the Observer in this era starts calling him Real Estate Steve. Were you concerned about changing the look and feel of Sting after all this time? Like, he's been so identified with this superhero persona. And now suits and glasses, no paint. It's a big leap. Was he comfortable with this?
Real quick, I'll answer that, but let's go back to that New Japan.
Okay. I didn't think you wanted to delve into that.
Well, no, just goal alignment. We've talked about it often, but we had a fantastic relationship with New Japan. In, Kurt, they wanted 3D through the, whatever it may be, but that talent exchange of us sending them talent worked. They sent us talent, but I was going to say, you kind of delicately let it out there, Mr. Russo, but Tanahashi, and we've said this before, Okada doesn't have fond memories, but it's
no,
none. But you kind of go back and go, okay, goal alignment. We, and I say we collectively, all of us, didn't lean into the New Japan audience at this time. Obviously, regret, learn from your mistakes, but it just wasn't. It wasn't a priority. Our priority was to Spike. Period. So with that being said, yes, Sting was super comfortable with it. A little bit surprising to me, but no, Sting's never been afraid to kind of step out of the
comfort zone.
Well, I don't even say that. Play in a different extension of his personality. And this Main Event Mafia Sting was he still stayed true very, very much to his character, but it gave it a different look. And of course, Meltzer or Keller, whoever it was, they got to give their spin and dig onto it because they don't like change either. But I thought it fit well. Glasses and suit, and you didn't see Sting in suits very often, and you did in the Main Event Mafia.
We're going to have a new group named here. It's Jay Lethal and AJ Styles and Samoa Joe. They're going to call themselves the Young Guns. It's also reported in the Torch that Jeremy Borash and Kurt Angle were in negotiations with SiriusXM about doing a show. I didn't know that back in 2008. Of course, a lot of you may not recall that Jeremy Borash was actually an award-winning broadcaster.
Marconi.
From Minnesota before he actually got hired with WCW to do WCW Live, which is really like the first big time wrestling podcast back before that was a thing. So it's not a surprise to me that he was interested in it, but long before Kurt Angle was a podcaster, he's having conversations here with SiriusXM. It was with our great close personal friend, Tim Sabian. Do you remember hearing about these conversations?
Only from JB, but roughly. JB can create chemistry with about anybody.
Yes.
Him and Kurt's chemistry was good, like really good. They not just liked each other, I think, but they trusted each other.
Yes.
And they played to each other's strengths. So it didn't surprise me. And I'm like, hell, go for it.
One of the other things that surprised me is that you guys are going to hire someone as the new director of graphics. He's coming over from the WWE, where he ran the graphics department for more than a year. He's been out of the WWE for a few months here, and now here he is. And yeah, what do you think?
You know what? In the post-production or in the production world, you know, it was, all right, where are we getting the graphics from now? Who's doing them? What's it costing us? Because we're about to add a salary, an overhead, insurance, all the ABCD of what it takes to bring on another employee head. But it was something that was obviously needed probably for a long time.
Yes.
Especially as we move into it. So yeah, another step in growth. Again, with our limited, even though we were profitable now, we still answered to Dallas rigorously. And so it was a good hire.
A couple folks are going to let go here. Pat Kenny, who we know is with the NWA these days, and Glenn Gilberti, they're both going to be let go as road agents. So I guess at this point you've got Dutch and Savio and Cornette and Dog. Why were Glenn and Pat showing the door here?
Head count. Literally, that would be something from Dallas. Do you really need this many? Do you really need this many? Do you really need this many? To get into specifics, I don't remember anything other than they weren't on the creative team, and I think the others were, except BG, and maybe BG was still in a talent role. He was trying to do both. I don't know. I'd have to really get back, but they did nothing wrong to get taken off the road at all.
Speaking of the NWA, I know that's where Pat Kenny is these days. I got to bring this up. It made the news that I guess, as the story goes, according to Nick Houseman, that there were some folks on the CW side of things who were upset about I guess what we should call the cocaine spot at the most recent NWA pay-per-view with Dr. James Mitchell. And there's a report from Nick Houseman that was Billy's idea, and he felt strongly about it, and it was included in the pay-per-view. And I guess, as the story goes, according to Nick Houseman, that some folks at CW weren't really thrilled with that. A, is that the first time you remember there being a cocaine spot in a wrestling show? And B, what do you make of this news that perhaps the television executives, although it was on pay-per-view and not TV, were not thrilled with that?
Connie, that news broke this past weekend, right?
It did.
On my pain scale on a 1 to 10, I was at a 78. So I'm trying to build some sympathy here. No, I'm kidding.
Well, it was a 4 or 5.
But I meant to text you that, like, hey, I've learned enough to know, don't assume anything. There's taken out of context. But it's funny you bring this. Folks, Conrad did not tell me he was going to bring this up. He never does on this specifically. No, Connie, I was going to text you and say, tell me how this fit into the story, because I don't see any logic to this. Like, where was it coming from? Where was it at? Where was it going? As far as the storyline purposes, I get it being on pay-per-view, but how does this work into their stories?
I think James Mitchell is like leading a new group, and he was trying to get them all energized and charged up. So he had a little happy dust for them. And so they were like on I don't know, a raven's nest, you might call it, crow's nest or whatever, part of the building. And so they had a camera, a wide angle, just go ahead and see them do their business there. And Eric and I talked about this, like in the confines of a movie or a television series, this is no big deal. Like you see people consume drugs on those programs all the time. However, because a lot of people associate this wrestling with entertainment for children, maybe they think that doesn't have a place. I would argue, I don't think that necessarily the NWA product is aimed at children. Like just in my opinion, I don't think the GCW program is, I don't think the NWA program is. I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying it's a specific, like little kids go see AEW and WWE. I don't think little kids go, see NWA and GCW. I'm not saying they can't. I'm just, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it's an age old kind of mentality in business. Who's your audience? Toby Keith said, Jeff, figure out who your audience is and earn them one at a time. So do you not want to draw families and kids? Would you say Billy and NWA and GCW would say, no, I do not want kids to come to my show? I don't believe it's marketed that way. Neither one of them say that it's an adult content, do they? They don't give a rating and a warning, like, because movies and TV shows, you kind of, what is it, a MA mature anyway. That's why, like, especially in today's environment, you can kind of look at the old chairman's mentality. Don't get political, don't get religious, and this kind of falls into that bucket that do you, and I think he does that. He's obviously, or that company always has their beliefs. You just don't know it by watching it. Are you going to alienate any of your audience by putting this on? Yeah, I think that's what I'm hearing. If that is to be led down the truth, if he's trying to get on, or, if you're trying to go to a wider audience on network, cable, or even digital, are you alienating some of your audience? Risk versus reward.
Yeah.
So I didn't hear the Houseman. What is he saying?
The rumor, according to Nick Houseman, I mean, this is the report from houseofwrestling.com, HAUS wrestling.com. He reported that allegedly there might be a circumstance here where the show is no longer going to be on television, and it might actually be on the CW app.
Okay.
As a result of this, that maybe they have lost some confidence. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But either way, just the idea that perhaps the television deal lies in the balance is pretty wild.
Yeah. Not sure if I believe that either, but anyway, move on.
I don't know. I don't know either. We'll see. By the way, I want to be clear. We're not piling on Billy Corgan. We're pulling for the NWA. We want that to do well. I just think it's interesting that, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not saying this to be silly, and I think this is probably why he did it. I don't remember there ever being a cocaine spot in wrestling before. There's been lots of jokes about alcohol. There's been lots of jokes about marijuana.
I don't remember it. And not even on.
I mean, you think Luthez ever did a bump? Okay, let's talk about the Main Event Mafia here for a minute.
Yeah, we got here, pal.
The Main Event Mafia, I guess, is trying to be like the NWO. They're the cool baby faces to the crowd. And I know you weren't necessarily there for all of the NWO run, but you were there when it started to get really, really hot. And you saw how it really changed the dynamic.
I was there year one doing the Flair deal.
96.
Yeah.
I mean, were you there in May when it really got kicked off? I thought you came in like October.
No, it's worse, but
yeah.
The time I got there, they thought, oh, is he the sixth member or the fifth member? Sixth? I was there early, but I remember getting there and kind of getting my lay of the land here. And here's what I remember. One of my first month conversations, Conrad, is, we're selling out. How do they do promotionals, on sales? Elliot Murnick. There were others, and they're like, Jeff, they sell out in one day. And I go, oh, okay. Ratings aren't just good. Houses are great. That kind of, yes. I knew firsthand the NWO was a completely new set of circumstances for national audiences.
I'm just wondering, Ric Flair's been pretty adamant that the NWO killed WCW. Now, of course, later he just says it's Eric Bischoff. But he felt like at the time, it neuters the baby faces. Like, how can you position the baby faces to be lame if the heels aren't truly hateable and they're cool heels? Now you sort of neuter the baby face, and it throws off the whole dynamic where instead of us cheering for the good guys to make the save, we're cheering when the good guys are getting their asses beat.
Yeah.
It just totally changes the dynamic, much like the Sopranos changed the way we felt about villains. I mean, in that story told from anyone else's perspective, Tony Soprano's the villain, but we sort of like him. I know you've never seen it, maybe not the best example, but you get the idea.
I do completely.
You were never, respectfully, a likable heel. You were always a shit heel. We hated you.
Yes.
To the point where a lot of people who listen to this show originally said, ain't no way I'm listening to that show. I hate that guy.
Conrad, you have no idea how many. I mean,
so I'm just saying, like, were you concerned? Because it feels like to me, you of all people would be like, hey, a cool heel ain't gonna work. You got to be a shit heel like me.
So do you think I had any issue talking to Scott Steiner about being a true heel? None.
No.
Booker, none. Kurt, none. Kevin Nash, there's no way you can recreate history. He is NWO, but you kind of look at him working with the young guys. Kevin has no problem doing a quote unquote shoot interview. If he's rifling the babyface in the right context, surrounded by a couple of other heels, well, he's a heel. Sting, I just thought, that's why I think I would have loved to have seen the Main Event Mafia completely play out instead of just getting turned off overnight, literally disbanded overnight, just to see where it would have gone. Because I'll go to your Flair comment. The long term of it, Rick has a point, because there were never, ever heels built on the backside. So Hulk and team could turn full-fledged babyface and fight those guys. But in the rise to prominence, to me, I always looked at it as WWF invaded WCW, right? So they were kind of the heels, and then they were cool and hip and all this, and all of a sudden now the brand. That's why, you look at the invasion angle and all the different things. Is I think kind of the long-term play could have been either to been the heel, build heels on the backside. If you're playing armchair quarterback, do that where the NWO could win and persevere, and you could have two babyface groups, all that. Instead, it just kind of floundered, and I was a part of all that floundering, that they had no payoff. It was a story that went on 3 or 4 years and never really got a payoff. Was it super successful for 2 or 3 years? Yes. But it died on the vine.
We've also got a go home.
It's a fun topic to discuss too, but go ahead.
We've got the Main Event Mafia. You're going to be running house shows. I don't think any of those guys are going to be on house shows, but we're still getting lots of entertainment on TV. The Go Home Impact, as we get towards our pay-per-view, features a promo from Scott Steiner. He says the young guys wrestle and then return to the back and grab their joysticks and play their video games and look at their comic books. He said they call each other during the week and go online and play video games. And he said, quote, you go online to these mark wrestling sites to see if you got a 4-star match, a 5-star match. What do you care what these geeks think? Ask us what we think and we'll tell you that you suck, end quote. Nash, Booker, Angle, and Sharmell are all laughing, and Steiner says he's better than each one of them. Quote, you say you've been in TNA since the beginning and you've built this brick by brick. No, you were here in the beginning because you didn't have any other options. It's a strong promo from Scott Steiner. What'd you think?
Wasn't in favor of those last lines.
Yeah.
I think he could have, I knew where he was going with it, but I think he could have worded that a little bit different.
Agree.
But it goes back into kind of letting a talent at least say things with conviction. Again, you get into micromanaging talent and trying to wordsmith everything. He got his point across in a lot of ways. And you know, again, we're in the high def studio, the impact zone. We added, I think, 200 seats or something like that. Anyway, but they were into it. They were into this story. They understood it. They were lively in so many ways, but you know, nothing was perfect. But it was an authentic deal, and Scott felt every word of it. Just that's his opinion, his truth. It wasn't the truth.
We also know that Booker T, he's a member of Main Event Mafia, and after they've all went in the ring and just absolutely shit on the entire company, he's going to team up with Beer Money to take on Christian and Motor City Machine Guns, which sorry to wrap my head around, but it is what it is. There's a ladder match for a shot at the TNA tag team titles because, well, why wouldn't it be a ladder match? We got Tanahashi in here with Matt Morgan and Abyss and Team 3D and LAX. Abyss and Morgan are going to get the win, and that sets up a shot at the pay-per-view. No, that's not right. The Machine Guns have the shot. So Abyss and Morgan will get a title match at some point in the future, which means we probably didn't have to have this match right here. Rocket Khan would turn on Taylor Wilde in a match against Kong and Saeed. Scott Steiner is going to beat Samoa Joe in the main event, and Kevin Nash comes down and attacks before AJ Styles would make the save. The show gets a 1.1 rating. It's down from a 1.6 the week before. And the pay-per-view, we're finally here. We're over 2 hours deep in our podcast. We're finally to our topic. This show got a overwhelmingly positive review, though, from the readers of the Observer. 81.9% gave it a thumbs up. There's a lot of controversy going into the event, though. It was reported in the Torch that the Insane Clown Posse reached out to you directly about coming to the pay-per-view, and you asked if they could not dress up in makeup and just enjoy the show as spectators. Is that how the original conversation went?
No.
Okay. Well, ICP shows up, according to the Torch, in makeup with Scott Hall, and they move their way to the front row in full view of the hard camera, and TNA announcers were instructed through their headsets to ignore them as best they could. They never mentioned them by name or acknowledged their distraction until Sheikh Bashir interacts with them at ringside. And even then, it was just said on commentary they were familiar faces. Bashir gets involved with one of them. They throw a soda at him. He slaps one of them. Talk to me about this.
I wish I could, and I didn't, reach out to whether it was a JB or somebody to help me jar my memory. What it feels like or sounds like, Scott tipped a canoe that night. So
yes.
and you laughed at me on one of our real early episodes when you said something about ICP, and I said, whoop, whoop. And you just said,
I couldn't believe you knew that.
Buddy, I've been on stage punting Fago into the audience. So don't talk to me about no juggalo deal. That's a true story at the gathering. But I love those guys, and hats off to what they have built.
Yes.
Years. Oh, unbelievable. Anyway, so I was never opposed to that, but Scott, you know, he wasn't a part of things. I've always, since the day I met him in Tennessee, but you know, I've loved Scott. Wanted to give him opportunities. But I think he was tipping the canoe that night and had fallen out, and things went kind of sideways, and we didn't really get to go through on it. I know there were some folks backstage that were not happy because I think he had no-showed multiple times and all that, but I kind of think it was all right, I want to be good to Joe and Shaggy and the crew, but let's just let them do the deal. But this never went anywhere. We never kicked anything off, because from time to time, Juggalo Championship Wrestling, you know, it's been a priority of theirs and then kind of slid because they've got their full-time career, which is the music industry.
According to the Torch, management went to Scott Hall's friend Kevin Nash and asked what they should do about the inebriated Scott Hall in the crowd. And according to the Torch, Nash surprised people by suggesting that Scott Hall be kicked out of the building and escorted off the premises by Orlando police. Hall was upset with Nash, but left without incident. Hall was not scheduled to be a part of the Joe-Nash match at any point. Joe and Nash did not want any distractions, and under no circumstances did TNA management, nor even his friend Nash, want to put Hall in a position where they have to rely on him for anything storyline-wise. So as a reminder, it's been said on TV now that Kevin Nash made his mind up about Samoa Joe back several months ago, Joe, when you cut that promo about Scott Hall. And now here we are at the pay-per-view where these guys are going to wrestle, and it's not part of the show. Scott Hall is there. And as Jeff says, tipping the canoe. And the joke backstage, which everyone attributed to Jeremy Borash, was, hey, it took Scott Hall a full year to show up for a scheduled pay-per-view appearance. Apparently, there's still hard feelings with TNA over Scott Hall no-showing the prior year, and nobody was in favor of including him in this storyline at this point, and perhaps especially not Joe or Nash. This is a tough moment, if this report is true, for Kevin Nash, because we know he is a super loyal guy, and he had to put the business first here. I do think it's cool that you guys, out of respect and deference to Kevin, at least went and asked.
Well, and I don't remember all the ins and outs, but you say that Kevin, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, but indicated he had to put business first. Really? It's Scott's Kevin's love for Scott. The best thing for Scott to do right now is not be on camera. Is not be at a wrestling show. He's really saying, get my buddy out of here, and he'll probably only listen to the police. Unfortunately, that's what it does.
Meltzer had a different take. The public version of this story is that TNA made a deal with ICP to show up at ringside, where the group would wear JCW t-shirts, but claimed they didn't know Hall would be with them, and after the match, asked them to leave ringside. However, Hall was in the dressing room prior to the show, which led to a moment where the whole locker room broke up involving Scott Steiner. When it was brought up to Steiner that Hall was there in a deadpan, he said, of course he is. It's turning point, and he's here for the main event. He just doesn't realize it's 1 year late. Of course, I think the joke there is that's actually Borash's line. Hall had also done an interview on the ICP website 5 days earlier saying he was coming to the taping. There's no way Scott Hall is going to be there with other wrestlers in an angle where they're all in front of the hard camera, where it's not known about ahead of time. And no matter what state Hall is in, he's not going to put himself on camera at ringside as a fan unless it's part of an angle. Hall was then not at TV tapings for the next 2 days and was long gone by the time the Joe versus Nash match took place. They were trying to kayfabe everyone on Hall. One TNA source said they, in fact, saw the thing being set up, and it was a completely set up angle, and couldn't understand why they would try and swerve the wrestlers and people in the company. You're saying right now, this is not an angle.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think we originally said, let's bring ICP, or they were going to be there. Yeah, let's start like this was supposed to be the jumping off point for
ICP, but not Scott Hall.
Not Scott Hall.
Got it. So either way, the show itself is a great show. As we said, it was very well received. Even Meltzer said it was a strong turning point show, and it's the most focused main event angle in a long time, with the Main Event Mafia versus the TNA Originals. We start the show with Eric Young winning a 10-man elimination match. Tons of talent in there. Cybernetico, Consequences Creed, Sanjay Dutt, Petey Williams, Jimmy Rave, Doug Williams, Tanahashi, Homicide, Jay Lethal. They get plenty of time, 17 minutes and 12 seconds. As you might imagine, lots of action here, 3 stars. Next up, we've got Taylor Wilde and Roxy teaming up against Awesome Kong and Saeed. Taylor Wilde and Roxy are going to pick up the win. It gets 2 1/4 stars. Rhino is going to pin the X Division champ, Sheik Abdul Bashir. It's a non-title match. It was 8 minutes and 16 seconds. 2 stars for Rhino's victory. Of course, as we mentioned, that's where we saw everything happen with Scott Hall at ringside. Then we would see Mick Foley do a pep talk with Alex Shelley. And Shelley and Sabin are showing him no respect. And Foley's given a speech about everything that's happening with Sting and blah, blah, blah. Robert Roode and James Storm are going to keep the tag titles against Sabin and Shelley. Think about that. Beer Money and Motor City Machine Guns. You guys had such a great tag division here. 3.5 stars. And Meltzer would say that the match was real good. The crowd was into it. And Roode and Storm may be the most underrated act in all the wrestling business. In the ring, they blow away Miz and Morrison and DiBiase and Rhodes. Beer Money, man. Could you have ever seen that tag team working in the WWF?
Yes. I thought it was a mainstream. How do I say this? When it kind of, because remember, Bobby had been Team Canada.
Yes.
And James had been with Chris Harris, America's Most Wanted, and they kind of just came together. But lessons I'd learned from my old man and just kind of observing it and understanding, man, we've got two different characters that come together. But man, this works. Like really works. And they both talk and have different points of view, but it's marketable. And the Beer Money is such a common slang term. It all just kind of fit together. I think all of us knew, let's roll with this. And because their in-ring work was phenomenal. I mean, really good tag psychology, heels or baby faces at this point, heels, but yeah. And again, the depth of the tag division, when you look at 3D and Motor City Machine Guns, and God, when you look at our roster, 07, 08, 09, Conrad, it's fun to look at to me. You know, it's like, okay, I look for myself, I'm saying, damn, we got lucky. We had a really good group.
It's a fun time to be talking about this particular show because we've got Christian Cage here. And a lot of people at this point were thinking, hey, his contract is coming up. He's probably not going to re-sign. He might re-sign. It's been reported that he's been working with Dixie on these negotiations. And I think a lot of people probably were curious, like, what would he do next? Little did we know 15 years later, he'd arguably be doing some of his best work of his career. I think, you know, the best heels in the business, it's 1A and 1B with The Last Outlaw and Daddy Christian Cage. Dude, it's really, really fun what he's doing right now. But here in 2008, did you think TNA had gotten all they could out of Christian?
No.
Okay.
So no, I didn't. But Bound for Glory weekend, the month before in Chicago, I'm wrestling Kurt. But so whenever I feel like I got up there on Friday, but Dixie had asked me to be in a meeting with him and Christian. We were going to talk his contract. I actually think they ended up coming to my room because it was, I had a meeting space in my room. And I knew, yeah, I've talked to Jay about this. I knew, I don't want to say 3 minutes, but I knew 5 minutes into the meeting, 7, 10 that lasted 30 or 40, he ain't staying.
Yeah.
He ain't staying. But, you know, go through the formalities.
Yeah.
Yeah. And very respectfully on all sides, but he ain't staying. So, you know, Booker's first program with Christian, let's give him somebody to win. We don't need Booker to drop the belt to as a first opponent, but no, Jay was on the way out, and I've had a strong feeling Jay would finish the right way.
He did.
And oh God, yes, he did. But you know, when I look back on, he was good for us, and I think in a lot of ways we were very good for him.
No doubt.
Yeah, becoming that champion, and how that went down, and the picture that was painted, and the momentum put behind it, and just kind of the thought process to really go through all of it. I think it was a very, very significant stepping stone for his career.
I would not argue that at all. It was an important deal for him. It worked all around. And so did this next match. What an incredible match. You know, we're building towards, you know, we've got the Sting and AJ Styles match. We've got the Kevin Nash and Samoa Joe match. Lots of big matches. but this one is probably the best match on the show. If you're going to go out of your way to watch one match from this show over on the Impact Network, which we'll throw up a graphic for here in a minute, I would recommend that you go out of your way to see Kurt Angle and Abyss. And there you see it. It's impactwrestling.com/packages. Use our promo code Jeff. This is an incredible match. They go 17 minutes and 18 seconds. And Abyss, just like Joe Burrow, looking at the lights when it's all said and done. 4 1/4 stars. What this is most notable for, there's lots of incredible stuff in this match, but the highlight that people replay over and over and over is where Kurt Angle gets a running start and launches himself off the ramp and does a forward flip onto Abyss. I've never seen anything like that before. I mean, especially not from an Olympic athlete. My God, what are we doing?
Game time, man.
Yes.
He doesn't have a QB rating like 56 or 58 in any of his pay-per-view matches. like Abyss's QB, who I'll leave nameless. But no,
people are going off scaffolds here. People are getting speared through walls here. Like Kurt Angle and Abyss are, I mean, they're throwing caution to the wind here.
I shouldn't joke because at this point of the pod and talking about it's awesome. It's
unbelievable.
And look, Kurt is next level, but I'm going to give him his flowers. When Abyss has an opponent like Kurt, Abyss rises to his level.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I think there's sometimes that guys, and I'm not saying Abyss is on some low level. He's a top level guy, but you put those two guys in the ring, they tore the freaking house down. And I've tried to rack my brain. Why in the world did I put a decision? It was ultimately probably on my shoulders. Why did I put this match on and have Nash and Joe follow it? Like, what is the logic? And I might have thought, well, they're going to go shorter. And because I want Sting and AJ not to have to follow Kurt and Abyss. Maybe that was the logic, but this is where I'm going to go right into a highly motivated Kevin Nash and a highly motivated Joe. That is the match that I thought you were going to talk about when I looked at research the last time. I said, Conrad will highlight this is because you expect Kurt to tear the ass down. You expect Abyss. You expect AJ. We weren't expecting. You talk about a sleeper of a match. Promo code Jeff. Go watch Nash and Joe. Go watch it. I remember going, holy crap. It was good. Again, a fun time to be in TNA. Folks were motivated. The Main Event Mafia were motivated to show the young guns we still got it. Period.
You mentioned that Kevin Nash beat Samoa Joe in 11 minutes and 26 seconds. Meltzer says, at first I thought it was ridiculous to put this match after Angle and Abyss with all the stuff they were doing. And it probably would have been better reversing, but these guys were able to at least follow. Joe was clearly motivated to put on a good match since he was losing. And Nash also made sure in the match layout to protect Joe as much as possible by letting him kick out of 2 jackknife power bombs. I mean, that's a pretty big deal here. 3.5 stars. This
Nash,
is a match that
okay. Nash in a 3.5 star, but yeah, exactly. I don't want to talk about the Meltzer rating. I am saying though, when we looked at it laid out, I had to think, why in the world? But I kind of think we thought what I just said. So anyway, hats off. This pay-per-view rocked.
Main event still to come. It's for the TNA title. Sting beats AJ Styles to retain. 14 minutes and 43 seconds. The crowd's on fire for it. They're not booing either guy. Styles is working as a face. Sting's working as more of an old school champion when he was maybe the traveling champion that would come to your territory. So he's not really a heel, but he becomes the heel because you want the local guy to win. That was the vibe that Dave Meltzer used to describe this. There's dueling chants from the crowd. Sting is pressing Styles overhead and dropping him on the top rope to the floor. Some fun stuff here. Ultimately, Sting is going to get the win in 3.5 or 3.25 stars. Really a phenomenal showing for AJ Styles, pardon the pun, and for Sting in the main event. This is about as good of a pay-per-view as you're going to be able to get in TNA. Wouldn't you agree? It's on the short list of the best ones.
It's on the short list, but the thing that, the lesson that, going look, we shot the angle with the Main Event Mafia, and this is our first showing. And just kind of how we laid out the angle, the Uber heel and Steiner and Nash and all the things that went with it. But you have kind of that wild card within the Mafia. But Sting, if you could get the folks chanting for AJ against Sting, it's storyline driven. It's not character driven. And that's what draws money.
Well, we are looking forward to drawing some money next week. We're going to have an incredible topic. We're going to be talking more about your time in TNA in 2017 and how it came to an end. Some legal issues, maybe some personal issues. We'll talk about Anthem, Global Force, all that and more. If you've got a question for us, ask it now. It's at My World Pod over on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Also love to have your business if you're interested in growing your business by targeting men 25 to 54. Well, there's no better place to advertise than right here with us at advertisewithJArrett.com. In the meantime, by the way, we got lots of fun swag and gimmicks available for you over at boxofgimmicks.com, including the brand new Skunk Hunt shirt. It's exactly what you imagine. Instead of a gun, there's a guitar nailing a skunk. You got to go see for yourself. Boxofgimmicks.com. It's one thing to hear the show. It is another to see it. I encourage you to check us out on YouTube. That's My World on YouTube.com. Jeff, this was fun, man. I never know what to expect when I sit down and click record, but we had an absolute blast today. I want to thank everybody who showed up to be a part of our live studio audience. I know we had Coach Keith and Coach Rosie and little Jimmy Sorensen and Eric and a whole bunch of folks who checked us out this morning. Thank you guys for being a part of our live studio audience. You know, we get the opportunity to come here and be a big part of what we're doing. You get to be a part of the live version of the show, and there's tons of bonus content. As a matter of fact, we actually had you sit down with one half of the Highlanders back in the day, the WWE Highlanders. Robbie decided to show up at a TNA taping. You caught up with him, and that's available now over at adfreeshows.com. Plus a ton of other great series, Making the Towns with Blue Meanie. The book with David Crockett is just incredible. We've got the Insiders. We just launched one with Kerry Silken. Hey, speaking of Kerry Silken, I want to ask you, in this era, back in 2008, Kerry Silken replaced Gabe Sapolsky as the booker of Ring of Honor with Adam Pearce, who we know these days is doing his thing over on SmackDown and Raw. And I understand it. I guess he's just on Raw now. They just announced a War Games on Monday Night Raw last night, and it was announced by Adam Pearce. Really cool to see what all those guys are doing now. We know Gabe is working behind the scenes with WWE, but was there ever any interest that you recall? I know you guys would have worked with Gabe for years at this point. Why didn't there, or was there an attempt to bring Gabe into TNA?
You know, I don't ever remember him reaching out. Obviously, I don't remember us reaching out. There was never a conversation. Not good, not bad, not any, to my knowledge. Yeah, that's the only real comment I have on that. What was cool for me, I don't know history. I was obviously in the TNA bubble. I didn't know Adam Pearce booked Ring of Honor. I had no idea. Kind of thought I was up on. So it went from Gabe to Adam to who? Hunter?
Yep.
As in Delirious?
Delirious, yeah.
Okay. I missed the Adam. And I'm Adam is a guy, man, hard work pays off.
Oh, no doubt.
Nose to the grindstone, keeping on. He's engaged. He wants to be more, he's a producer. Anyway, I'm happy for that guy. He works hard and takes the industry. We need more Adam Pearce. Yes. Yeah. It's a business. We need more of those folks out there.
Well said. We're going to talk about a lot more of the business next week here on the program. Jeff, I'm concerned. You got a sore spot and you're going to be wrestling on TV. You don't think your opponents are going to target that, do you?
I hope they do, because one thing the last outlaw doesn't have is a glass jaw. So let them take their best shot, pal.
Okay. How about that?
Look at the look on you. I got a nice little reaction out of there.
Come see The Last Outlaw, AEWTIX.com. Tickets are on sale now. And be sure to tune in this Saturday when Tennessee loses yet another game.
Hush. I want to follow back on this. So as we're recording this, it's Tuesday. And during the commercial breaks, as you guys know, before we get started, the Queen brought me a bowl of oatmeal and brought me a little refresher of iced tea and coffee and all this. But she also gave me a little heads up. I also see that she texts both of us. Last night, guess what I got to do?
What'd you get to do last night?
As I was nursing, I was in the hospital bed, feet elevated. No.
Whole deal.
My daughter, JArrett, played her very first college basketball game, and it was on ESPN Plus.
Wow.
Yeah, buddy. I had it on the big screen and paced just like I was at the game, right in front of the TV and all this. She got a lot of minutes. I could not be proud of her. So it was cool though to,
Dude, give me a heads up next time. I want to watch.
Yeah, I didn't find out till yesterday morning Sunday, when I was in ICU that, hey man, this is on ESPN Plus. So anyway, it was exciting. It was
super
very
cool.
Yeah.
Super cool. Well, congrats to the whole JArrett family, man.
Yeah. I was a proud dad. I'll just say that. Super proud dad. So
between that and Cody being, the honorary member of the Rock and Roll Express, it's been a pretty good year for the JArrett.
You got to I got to roll because I literally got to get downstairs and get packed. But I'll just say this: my man coached her. I'm proud of him. He's in amateur wrestling practice. He's grinding it out. He comes out of practice every day, and Karen, not a lot of talking when he gets in that car. He's ready to get home. He's ready to get him a shower, and he's ready to get food. But I am so dadgum proud of him. He's amateur wrestling and digging in. And
I mean, the rumor is his favorite faction is not the Last Outlaws. It's the Mogul Embassy. Have you heard that?
Let's not go down that rabbit hole, but you are 1,000% correct. And I believe this is truth. Maybe you should direct message Conrad, Cody on his Instagram and I believe he can do the Nana dance better than Nana. I'm just going to
I swear, I don't know if you saw, but I had Eric Bischoff go viral with that a while back.
I did. Cody can do the Nana dance better than Nana. I'm just going to say it.
Well, what I need right now is for Marcus to go to a one shot of you, because you're such a good sport. Hey, WTIX boys and girls, see the Last Outlaw, and we'll see you next week right here on My World.